Move this up here.
Welcome, everybody. I am the captain upon the Fervent Drift, and tonight I am joined by Brian, casual captain Butler. Now, how fitting is it, really? Like, I have always gone as the captain, and on our first voyage out into the podcast world, we have a fellow captain. Maybe we should find an admiral and, start a fleet. Anywho, welcome to the Captain's Tabletop. This is where we are going to be talking D&D, tabletop roleplay, and the topics the hobby just can't stop arguing about. Tonight, as I said, we are joined by Brian, Captain Casual Butler, a professional DM from Start Playing Games. Brian is known for warm and welcoming tables, rich storytelling, and character-driven adventures that leave a mark long after the session ends. A man much after my own heart. Started out running an adaptation of Curse of Strahd that eventually became a multi-year level 20 campaign spanning the Outer Planes, which is one hell of a way to earn your sea legs. When he's not running games, he, like me, is wrangling toddlers. So, frankly, as I would agree with, DMing may be the less chaotic job of the two.
Easily.
Tonight, we are diving into some of the hobby's more controversial waters. Is professional DMing changing the hobby? Does strictly raw support the game, or can it chip away at player agency? Why is player safety still somehow controversial in parts of the TTRPG space? Is it a real debate, or just the final grumbling of the grognards on their way out? And, of course, the biggest issue surrounding the TTRPG space at the moment, AI. What is it good for? This is Captain's Tabletop, and let's set sail. So, professional DMing. Actually, Brian, before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you, your experience? Obviously, I hope I did your introduction justice there. But tell us exactly who you are.
Yeah, thank you. That was first. It's great to be here. This is exciting. That was one hell of a bop to get us started. I do wish I had that bass or baritone's singing voice. I feel like I could really bring something even more to my games. But yeah, so D&D for the past 10, 11 years has really become kind of a core part of my life. It started off, I think, as it does with a lot of people, right? Just getting together with some friends and said, hey, we saw this guy, these nerdy ass voice actors playing D&D online, Critical Role. Let's give this a try. So it went from that game at the time my living room, just playing weekly on a tabletop, and it continued to expand from there to me, coercing my staff at work to play an evening game with me, to teaching students when I worked at a uni. To even doing convention play and online play, and then come pandemic, a lot of it moved online. Even our local longtime friend groups went online. So I've had a lot of really cool opportunities to be able to both play and run games in just a wide variety of those types of settings, be it in person, online, one shots, multi-year campaigns, things that are more serious. We use the scale of we're on the scale of Lord of the Rings to Monty Python, and I've had the pleasure of playing in both of those sides. So yeah, and right now I'm running 3 games currently. One in person. I actually got to get back to an in-person game recently, and that's paid for some lovely folks nearby. And then just one a weekly paid online at the moment, as I'm coming back from hiatus after, as you mentioned, having twins. And then another one that is just a friendly game for friends. So yeah, it's a really great hobby, a great thing. It represents a lot of things, right? It's a social outlet, it's stress relief, it's an opportunity to kind of flex those creative muscles. And I'm always excited to talk about it and see more people gain interest in the hobby.
Amazing, incredible. So yeah, obviously you and I, myself, we obviously had our pre-show chat, which the lovely folks at home weren't really privy to, and we kind of felt that we were both very much on a similar step in the D&D world. As I myself am a professional DM, and we found that we had the same issues as casual DMs, and the same solution was to become a professional DM.
Right.
And obviously the big question is professional DMing actually changing the hobby in the way that people think it is? Now, I have to give credit to one particular individual because he has actually fueled a hell of a lot of the content and questions that I'm going to be asking here tonight. And this individual decided he was going to publicly try and out me in a Facebook group. A gentleman by the name of Josh. I won't give his full name because I'm not that mean. But he decided to go on a rant on my recruitment post for this video and telling me how, the people who started in 2013 aren't real D&D fans. They just jumped on the hype train and all this kind of stuff. And, he had very similar sentiments to professional DMing as well. And I'm one of these. I have ADHD. So if you're arguing with me, you're arguing with the wrong person, because one or two things. It means one or two things. It means either I knew I was wrong 20 minutes ago and I'm just baiting you now, and you're feeding my dopamine, or I just know I'm right, and I know you are irrevocably incorrect.
That's fair. Can I say on that, though? I think we're going to have a good conversation here because I really always have a tendency to try and play devil's advocate and try to understand where those viewpoints are coming from. And I'll tell you, my wife hates it because she will tell me, or back, when she was working outside the home, she'd tell me that someone did something. I was like, well, maybe this is the circumstance. Maybe this is why they're feeling that way. And she's like, no, just let me be mad. But I think in those conversations, right, with folks who maybe either take offense or want to gatekeep, right, those are two different issues that gentleman proposed. One was, you've not been doing this for 30 years, 40 years, it's wild that the 80s was 40 years ago. So you're not a true fan. I mean, I think we can kind of easily dismiss that. It's obvious gatekeeping. We know that it's not good for the hobby, and it's not true in anything, not just D&D. But then the other one is the aversion to pro DMing. And you and I, in our pre-conversation, had a really good chat about this, about, I think that there is room in the hobby for, not just room in the hobby for both. It is important for the growth of the hobby, in the same way that, podcasts, right? Like streaming of Critical Role, those shows that allowed people to kind of dabble in the hobby without just what some might seem like an extreme step is, I have to find people, go somewhere and play this thing. And that can be hard for some people, right? But there are steps, right, to kind of get involved in it and learn more about it and kind of develop a hunger for that, the adventure, the fantasy, the role play. And I think that this all caters to it, right? Is there are so many games, sure, that maybe there is a person who is charging that should not be.
Oh, yes.
And there are systems hopefully in place, and hopefully better systems in the future to kind of weed those out and protect players. But at the end of the day, there are more games because of that avenue. I'm one of them, right? I would not be able to run the paid games that I run paid would not exist if they weren't paid, simply because I only have that time away from my family because I'm able to garner that, that income. So that's, those are more games now available to the community that wouldn't otherwise. That's 10 people who are playing D&D weekly that perhaps wouldn't otherwise, because
and
there's a finite number of DMs out there.
This is the thing, right? Because a lot of people, when they hear professional DM, they hear you're just a grifter. And that phrase wrangles me. Because any professional GM worth their salt will put in the hours, if not more hours, than they get paid minimum wage. So, in the UK, we have something called the national minimum wage and the living minimum wage, right? If you're over 21, if you're in employment, you are entitled to the living minimum wage. Now, as a professional GM, I've got no problem disclosing this on here. I can turn over, I don't always, I can turn over between 1.5 and £2,000 a month. Now, that is around the top end, that is around $3,400. Now, that's on a really, really, really good month. But that doesn't change my monthly outgoings for running those games.
Right. Which is, how many hours would you say, each week in that month are you working towards those?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, for each game, I try to aim for no more than an hour or two's prep per session. And that's because I run a lot of the same campaigns, a lot of my own homebrew campaigns, but a lot of the same campaigns. So I know the story arcs, I know the worlds, and, it cuts down on just how much work I need to do. That being said, though, it also doesn't cut out the fact, that I buy maps, that I pay for artists, that I pay for the modules, the supplements, everything
and in doing
else.
So, supporting other creators in the community, which is a healthy and good thing.
Absolutely. And, one of my biggest priorities is giving my players as much content to use that they want to use as possible. And as a professional GM, I feel like that is part of my duty. Now, that's not to go into what other skills that people have that they can bring into not only their own games at home, but at a professional level. If you have professional skills, you can utilize them. For example, sales. If you have a career in sales, or you have a background in sales, improvisation. Like, you have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to sweet talk the broadside of a donkey, to put it politely. Nobody likes a salesman, but everybody likes their best friend. And as a salesman, you have to become that person's best friend, And in D&D, 9 times out of 10, you're playing with friends. If you're a casual GM, you are playing with friends, guaranteed it. But if you are playing for strangers online, you have to be able to make them your best friend very, very quickly, because otherwise it can go south for you equally as fast. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, I would say inevitably this is my experience, right? It's anecdotal. But my paid games, I have quickly become very, if not friends, at least friendly, right, with these people. These people who I communicate daily with in our Discord, because they're excited about the next game and they're asking clarifying questions. They're like, "Oh man, Strahd's Pride threw a magic dagger at me. Is it still in? Do I have that? Is it in my body?" Like, sorry, spoilers. It returns to her hand each round. But point right. So we have that constant communication, and I have always been a believer that it is proximity and time that creates fondness, right? It is that time you spend with, whether it's your colleagues, your partner, your friends from grade school, right? That creates that fondness. And the same is bound to happen in games, whether you're paying for it or not. Now, the expectations may be different, right? Like if I show up to the game that I run for friends and say, guys, I've just been kind of dragging this week. I don't really have much. How do you feel about a low energy, we'll do a shopping episode, or we'll do some campfire stories, something like that. That's fine. Like, we understand we're all very friendly. I could not and would not do that at a game where people are paying, right? They're
Really?
paying for a product, and the product is, I haven't had to yet. I think more likely I would have to cancel, right? I would not take their money and say, hey, this is going to be just kind of I'm not fully prepared. Let's just kind of wing it. We'll just chat a bunch.
So this might be where we differ. This
Okay,
might
yeah.
be where we differ, because as a professional GM and as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
At one point I now have put in break weeks. So every party that plays with me knows the third week of the month I am doing other things. I am not running D&D. I might be doing D&D related stuff, but I am not running D&D because that break is quintessential for me. But they know, I'm a father. I have autism. I have ADHD. I have children with special needs. And I'm doing all this other stuff on top. And there are weeks where I'll message them and say, "Hey guys, beach episode," and they go, "Yeah, let's do it." Or I go,
well, that's the
shopping
thing.
episode, and
You've communicated it,
yeah,
and that's what matters at the end of the day, right? Whether our styles may differ, we communicate it. Expectations are set, and expectations are met.
Yeah. And I mean, some of those sessions, I will tell you, end up more chaotic than the actual planned chaos.
Well, absolutely, man. Yes, and then you get in jokes for the people who were there, and
yes,
the people who what happens at vampire party stays at vampire. Was for my people. Sorry.
I like it. I like it already. But no, absolutely. I think as professional GMs, I think you are doing it in the nicest way possible. I think you're doing a disservice to your players by not giving them those shopping episodes, by not giving them those episodes where you just wing it. Because when you wing a session, when you really have to like crunch a session without pre-preparation, and it's coming off at the top of here, there's a lot more originality to it and a lot less rigidity to it.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with that.
One of the things I've found with GMs, and this goes for all GMs, is the more you plan, the more you rush. So
rush? Are you talking about rushing in the preparation or rushing in the game?
In the game.
In the game,
because I mean, I don't know about you, but myself personally, if I over prepare a session, I get really excited and I go, oh yeah. We need to get this done. We need to go here. We need to do this. We need to have this combat. We need to do... And my brain hyper-focuses on what I've got prepared.
That's fair.
However, if
target fixation.
If I have, for example, and sorry if you're watching Mask, but I'm going to drop you in it here. If I put in Pixie's mum dead, dwarf raid, and I don't know, Hodo goblin, I have 3 points there that I need to meet in that session. How we get to those points doesn't really matter too much, but those points get covered. Now, obviously, I don't just run a session with 3 bullet points.
Right.
But what I do is I go in with a rough... It's more like... My preparation is more like an artist doing concept sketches and getting concept images, and then the actual session is the final piece of artwork.
Right. And same here. And I think, so yeah, my prep looks like, so for instance, look at my Curse of Strahd game right now, right? Barovia and Beyond, or no, Mistbound Heroes is how I branded it. I'm, going through the various versions, the raw book, some Patreon expansions like Legends of Barovia, looking at things like the I Strahd novel, and a various few other things. Mandy's Mod is a popular one. I'll look at the section I'm about to go do. I'll look at all these, and I'll think about the last time I ran it, what went well, what didn't, and I'll pick my favorites. Right, so it's hopefully a little different. Actually, I found this is I have 2 players that have played part of this campaign before, so you have to kind of mix it up a little, right? If everyone, spoilers, has seen The Hags of Old Bone Grinder, and know that these delightful old ladies baking pies are hags, you got to mix it up. So that way it's a little bit different for those folks. So yeah, same thing. It's broad strokes from multiple sources. And you talked about the winging it, right? And this is how, well, I rarely have had to wing a whole session. It's what we do when we get there, because like you said, I'll over prepare and then they'll turn left. They'll go somewhere else. And that is fun, and I do enjoy that. But I think it comes for me more circumstantially rather than by design. But yeah, right back to I have a feeling that you and I are going to do this because we're both talkers, but we're going to get away from the initial question, which is, right, how is paid D&D changing the hobby?
I was literally about to bring us back to it, actually, funnily enough. Because for me, and this is the big thing, I don't mind. I am not threatened by DMs who run games for free. It's why I own a community D&D server where I have other DMs running games. And it's why I build and run workshops for free for DMs as groups and things like that. And it boils down to it's a different experience. And I think I explained this to you in our pre-chat. For me, it's much like the hospitality industry in many, many different ways. If you go to a Premier Inn and pay Premier Inn prices and you get a Premier Inn, you're really not going to be very surprised. But if you go to, say, for example, the Ritz and you'll pay McDonald's prices, you're overjoyed, you're excited. But if you go to the Ritz and you pay the Ritz prices, well, you've met expectations. And that's ultimately where it all lies, I believe. And I think those DMs who are threatened by professional GMs and they sort of come on and they go, I've run games for 40 years and never asked for a dime. The one question I ask you, have you ever accepted a pizza?
Right. There are different forms of compensation. And I would say even outside of that, right? Like I really liked the other analogy you made in our earlier conversation, which was about dinner parties, right? Like you may go to your friend's house and have dinner and have a great time, and that's virtually free, right? Of course, someone made dinner and you had groceries, but you're going to eat regardless. The experience is free, but you also may go to dinner and a movie or go to a restaurant. You're getting the same amount of food, but you're paying more for it. And no one is sitting outside an Applebee's saying, what are you doing? You could make those sliders in buffalo chicken dip at home with your friends. Why? How dare you? It's ridiculous, right? And I try to understand, and I get it, right? That it's threatened. This is a time-honored hobby. Some people have been doing it for 40 years, and they expect it to be a certain way, and it means something really important and genuine to them. It is maybe how it's actually. I indirectly introduced a friend to her spouse through D&D, right? Like that's a really cool connection to have, and I see how they see it. They say, "Hey, you're taking something that was a beloved community event, and you've capitalized it, right? You've made it pay to play," which, yes, is kind of true. But the same is true about just about all forms of entertainment. There are free concerts out there you can go to, but there are plenty of concerts you're going to have to pay to go to, and no one forces you to pay to go to those ones.
No,
right?
Exactly. It's like turning around to somebody like. I'm trying to think of a star that's not so controversial, but I cannot off the top of my head think of one. But think of pop stars and music phenomenons like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Chris
Taylor
Brown,
Swift, if you've heard of her.
Yeah, Taylor Swift, Chris Brown. It's like turning round to them and going, "You've got a talent. Why are you charging people to listen to your voice?"
Although, see, I'll push back here only because I know that the response is, how dare you compare yourself to, Beyonce, right? I'm not Beyonce. I'm not Matt Mercer. I don't think I'm Matt Mercer. I'm not even sure if Matt Mercer is Matt Mercer. He is ascended to some type of conceptual existence. But and I don't pretend to be, right? It's all about expectations, right? But I know what I need to ask to be able to dedicate the time that I dedicate to the game.
Yes.
And if that's right for you, great, come on board, let's play. If not, I wish you the best of luck in finding the right table for you, and I'll help you find it, right? I will point you to the communities that can do that. I had a similar experience to you actually today. I have one open seat in my weekly Strahd game after someone's work schedule changed. They can't play on Thursdays anymore. So I thought, try to fill that in some Facebook groups. And someone anonymously responded saying some kind of mean things about me, like how dare I consider charging what I charge? Like, is this a joke? And I was like, no, it's entertainment. My players really enjoy themselves. I put a lot of work into this. And he's like, you got to be kidding me. Brandon Lee Mulligan, world famous DM for those who don't know, charges this much for 6 people for a one shot. And first of all, I didn't know that. I didn't know you could just hire out BLM. Something tells me that you can't just do that any day of the week. But still, the point made was, how dare you say that, you're half as good as him, right? If his is only $260 or something, right?
So this is the thing, okay? This is because you made a valid point. You said, how am I comparing myself to Beyonce? I do not compare myself to Beyonce in any shape, way, or form. Because I'm white, I'm male, and quite frankly, I'm in my mid-30s.
You're not as pretty either.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. She's a beautiful lady.
Here's the thing, okay? If you wanted Beyonce to perform at your wedding, you're looking at tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds for a 1 hour
millions,
shot.
Actually. Yeah, millions.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For a 1 hour slot. You want me for 4 hours? Well, in comparison, I'm the lady of the night on the corner of the street. In comparison, I
don't want to. Well, I also don't want to shame that line of work, right? Either, because at the end of the day, we're all just trading our time and bodies for a currency that we exchange for someone else's time and that labor, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's the summary, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm, as I say, I know I'm no Matt Mercer. I know I'm no Brennan Lee Mulligan, and quite honestly, I wouldn't want to be. Why don't I want to be? I want to be known, obviously. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. But the difference is, I don't want to be somebody else. I myself, I'm a trained actor. I made 2 of my players cry in last night's session, which you can go and watch the VOD of, through a series of events that led to a character's parent dying. And this was the first session they'd met this character, this NPC. It was the first session, and they were basically there from the start of the session to the end of the session. And the players felt emotional because of the performance that I put to it. And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the experience, the time, the knowledge, and the skills. You're not paying somebody for, 50 minutes of talking about what we had for dinner last night, 25 minutes of memes and jokes, and another 15 minutes of, did you catch the latest Critical Role episode, to then play D&D for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it is entertainment first and foremost. It is performative art, if you will. Some may not like, hearing that, but it is in a way. It's a lot like DJing, and some of us do DJ while running our games. Shout out to the free platform Kenku FM. I love it. It runs my music through Discord.
That is a question for you, though. Because of professional DMing, do you think perhaps that free GMs are being undervalued in any way? Because that seems to be like quite a feeling amongst them, is that because GMs are getting paid and they're obviously doing this voluntarily, they're undervalued.
So, man, I'm sure we could try and do something crunchy and annoying with, price equilibrium and applying this to, supply and demand. But no, I think, right, the root of the hobby is still a social activity through friends. And I'll put myself in the shoes, right? When I started playing D&D, I started as a player. I was not the DM, right? And I could not get enough of it. Once a week was not enough. All right, I mean, we might have been playing once every other week. So I was seeking out opportunities to play more because I was loving this experience so much because it is like the most immersive, it's like a video game, but more immersive, right? Because you can do anything. And it's just such a good time. So I was seeking out opportunities at, looking for random board game pubs, nearby, conventions, online opportunities. And that experience that I had is, I think, the point of it is my weekly game with friends didn't go anywhere. And it was still my favorite D&D experience. But I was also then still willing to go to the Malted Meeple, the board game pub that hosted weekly D&D games, to play a little bit more, to meet new people. And I paid to do that. And this was back, this was pre-COVID, right? It's pre-start playing. That, you would go and you paid to play, you paid for drinks, they even had a little gotcha mechanic where for every $5 you spent there, you would get to pull from a chest of rolled up scrolls that maybe would give you some kind of benefit in game, which
See, that's really cool. I like that. I like that. The most what I got over here from a local gaming shop was a little stamp card, and if you filled up the stamp card for running games of D&D, you got £5 store credit. Like,
not
and it
loyalty
was
programs are not all the same.
no, it's not. And when I think about it, you would have had to have run 40 hours worth of games, a full week's worth of work in order to obtain £5 store credit.
And what
Now,
I think, right, you have to view that as that's not compensation, right? That's not paid DMing. That is a tiny, we appreciate you. It's when your
yes.
boss buys you a couple, you get paid from your boss. But when, I don't know, you help at your local philanthropy group and the president buys you a coffee.
I love that.
But no, yeah, I think both are important for the continuation and growth of the hobby and the community, because there is always going to be more people who want to play than people who want to, are willing to, or are capable of doing a good job of running a game of D&D and making it a great experience. And I think many will agree that no D&D is better than bad D&D. Like if you have a DM or a party that is going to create this type of toxic environment, it's better not to be there.
Yeah.
So I think by having that paid avenue, it opens up the ability for more people to do it who want to, and more players to use their funds, right? Use the money they have to find the entertainment that they want.
Yes. And on that point, one thing I have noticed a growing trend, which is fantastic. And it is, honestly, even as a professional GM, I could sit here and go, oh, that just means that I'm gonna struggle to find players. No, I don't. It fills me with joy when I look on Facebook groups, when I look on Reddit, when I look on, go through TikToks, and you've got people going, I am a new DM, I am looking for players.
Yes.
And, they're not asking for money, they're not asking for compensation, they're literally asking for players, which fills me with joy. And then something fills me with dread when I look in the comments, or lack thereof. Because everyone is screaming out, we want more DMs, but nobody is willing to sit at a table with a new DM to coach and encourage from the backlines or the sidelines, to try and teach them. And, it's a real shame. You will get those that go, oh yeah, I'm new too, can I come and play?
Yeah.
which is fantastic. Group of new players is fantastic. But it doesn't beat being a new GM and having an experienced player or an experienced DM at the table who can coach from the sidelines, who can coach in the background of, okay, this is what you did well, this is what you could improve upon, and this is what we need to do next time, And without backseat GMing the game, like from in front of all the others, you can literally just, keep it to yourself until after the session and say, hey, look, can we have a chat? I've got some notes for you. Most people are really receptive to that. If they're not receptive to that, don't offer it to them because they want to learn it on their own. And I respect that as well. They want to learn the craft, they want to learn the skill on their own, in their own time, in their own way, and they don't want to be influenced by others who could potentially pass on bad habits. And speaking of bad habits, that actually brings us on to the next question. Can professional DMing create bad consumer habits? Players treating GMs like service staff, review culture, entitlement, or I paid, therefore I control the table type.
I think it can, but only as much as you let it. It ultimately is gonna. It's hard because right, that is controlled by individual DMs, but how they act on the grander scale is what's going to potentially mold community expectations. But I anecdotal, right? I don't have data. I haven't done a survey of paid GMs to know how they if they respond to those type of things. But I would bet what I can. I am not a betting man. I have 3 kids, but
Just bet do what I do. Just do what I do. Bet the kids.
I could never. Okay, I'll bet one of my extra D20s that 99% of GMs, if you are a paid GM, right, you are likely deep enough into this hobby to have some level of respect for the integrity of the game to say no to unreasonable requests or requests that seem to be in the vein of, hey, can I start? And I'm going to sound, it's going to sound ridiculous, but like, hey, can I start with this? And here's a legendary magical item that they pulled from D&D Beyond.
Or worse, the homebrew wiki.
Yeah, or the homebrew, a luck blade. Or can I play as a revenant? Here's like a CR7 stat block or something instead of a PC. And these are things that have happened, right? Newer player. There's websites and guides and comments everywhere. It's impossible to know what online media has influenced them or led them to these pages and made them think, I should ask if I can have this in game. Now, maybe they do. Maybe they think they're trying to pull a fast one. They're like, I want this overpowered thing because I want the power fantasy. I'm paying money, so he's probably going to say yes. Maybe they will, but probably not. More likely, they're ill-informed, they're new, they're asking for things that aren't reasonable, and the answer is no. It's how you deliver that and maintain expectations and say, just so you know, at my table, I'm running a kind of 2014 rule set 5e. We're using standard PCs. For my players, I give them a character guide, right? Here's all the bits you need to know to make your character. And so you can see here, right, that's not an eligible choice for your starting character or an item that you can get. But I'll let you know, right? It's yes anding DM or no budding in this case. Spoilers, Curse of Strahd. There may be some opportunity to put items in the game. If you tell me in advance, like, yeah, his long-term goal is to acquire the wish spell to regain his mortal form, right? Because he's a revenant. We found the reborn player character ancestry, and used that. And it's like, okay, cool. We can work towards that. That is a goal now that you have a motivation in game that you want to get. If you start with that level 1, you've got nowhere to go. I'm sorry, there was a long tangent for bad consumer behaviors, but I think that's it, right? Is remembering that the integrity of the game comes first because that is the product you are producing.
Absolutely.
And if you're saying yes, you're buckling to those kind of unrealistic pressures, the game is not going to be good, and you're not going to have a paid game for very long.
No, because you'll get people that either get bored because it's too easy, or you get people like I saw in a TikTok not too long ago going, "Oh yeah, but my players are destroying the big bad in 2 turns." What are you doing that's allowing them to destroy the big bad in 2 turns? The big bad should be intelligent, fast, strong, hard to hit, with legendary resistances, legendary actions.
It should be appropriate for whatever the story is and for what the party wants. If you have a game where you've identified, like, so I asked this, my session 0, one of the things is, what do you want out of this D&D experience, or what have you enjoyed the most previously? And if everyone tells me, like, power fantasy, I want to feel like a gosh darn superhero, then we're going to adjust accordingly, and that's what it's going to be. Now, if they tell me, man, no, I love the idea of that dark fantasy, kind of desperate, scraping by for resources, threats are always around the corner, your typical Curse of Strahd, or Rime of the Frost Maiden, then we're not doing that, right? You're not getting those extra goodies. And you balance.
See, for me, I'm the DM that will sit down in the session 0 and go, my games are high lethality. I warn you now, my games are high lethality because they are designed to be more meat grinder-ish, but they are also narrative driven, and a couple of them are high-powered campaigns as well. So I'm sitting here with a level 4 party that have 2 amethyst lodestones and 2 Dragon's Wrath weapons and 2+2 longswords at level 4.
Right.
Along with a legendary sentient homebrew item that I create.
Right. But then because of that, you get to run these scarier encounters, and it might end up being Rocket Tag, but
they're going to be fighting ancient dragons by level 5. So
similarly, right, I have a system. This is gonna be a tangent, but I think it helps a lot in this space. This is something I put on Reddit years ago, got a lot of attention, called boon points.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is, so at the end of each game, we do a little, acknowledgement, right? And so a buddy and I created the DM side of this, and which is, I will toss out points to folks for things that I noticed that they did during the game that I thought were cool. And I don't say what they were, but it's, for Dave, you have a point in character development, 2 points in humor and improv, 1 point in ingenuity, and 3 points in plot and team, right? So those categories of things that I noticed, like, oh man, I loved it when you did that, or you used that tool really creatively, or you really opened up your character. And then the players get to give out X number of points to each other. And they specify, hey, I loved it when you did that thing. And it's a great way for them to acknowledge each other for either good role play, tactical thinking, humor. A lot of times it's just that thing you said made me spit my milk out my nose. And that was funny. And that's okay, right? Because the point is, it's acknowledging things that made the game fun. And I think that creates a positive feedback loop for whatever that party likes is going to get rewarded, and you'll get more of it.
There is another system for that called Stars and Wishes. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Yep.
Yeah. Stars and Wishes very, very much applies to this. Stars and Wishes is great to find out what your players want, what your players liked about the session, who they felt did really, really well in the session, and what they want to do in their following session. It's such a quick feedback loop to give people, a Stars and Wishes list that go, right, 3 things you want, short-term, mid-term, long-term.
Yes.
And 3 things you enjoyed about last session. Or 3 players you would give an inspiration point to and why, and then pick the 2 highest and give them both an inspiration. The 2 most mentioned, give them an inspiration. However you work it, just reward your players for being good players. And that's not to say that you ignore those who, maybe aren't quite so charismatic at the table or aren't quite so tactically minded. You have to be mindful and kind of go, okay, what has this person actually done well? Am I just going to give them an inspiration for taking part in the role play this session when they have been quiet for the majority of the campaign?
What's funny is you say that, but that's where I find the people when, it's usually even-ish, right? The distribution. I keep track. I have stats because I'm a nerd and I'd like to see that. But it is the quieter players that tend to have those more memorable moments because when they do speak up, so they tend to get a lot more of those points. And then the flip side of that is they can use those points to buy rewards in game. Anything from like re-rolling a roll or letting a friend re-roll a roll is cheaper, to getting an additional feat, or at high level a custom legendary item that grows in power with them and is integrated into the story. So like it's this really fun resource for them to be able to use and customize their character and reward good role playing. And I've just found that I'm tooting my own horn here, but it's a system I encourage every DM to do something like that, because I think that post game recap, and like you said, in the stars and wishes system, right? You're getting feedback, so you know what went well, what they liked, and you can, if you're the type to do that, if you're the type to tailor your game and really match what they want, which I do think is a buyer behavior piece, right? Is if I'm doing a paid game, I want to give them the experience. There will be other DMs who say, I am running this game. It's going to look like this. If it's right for you, please come and have a great time. If not, let's find you a different table. Both are valid. But if you're doing the former, having a system like this is really helpful.
Yep. So one final question before we move on to the next segment, and we will move on to the next segment very, very shortly. Are marketplaces like Start Playing Games and my own company, Fervent Drift Productions Limited, good for the hobby? Now, obviously, we're talking, as I say, when we're talking about marketplaces, we're talking about things like discoverability, standards, reviews, and, whether it's legitimizing the craft or actually hurting it.
I think it's a double-edged sword. And I have a bias. We both do, right? We are both people who have been paid GMs. Yes. We have both been on Start Playing. I presently am. You said you're starting your own company. They'll provide a similar service. Mm-hmm. But I think it would be are they problematic at times? Yes. Do they present challenges? Have people had bad experiences? Of course. We need better guardrails. We need better mechanics in place to protect consumers, like we do in most, I think, places where we spend money, right? But the existence of them, I think, is important in the same way that every other online community is. I think no one would argue that the existence of D&D subreddits or Facebook groups or, TikTok content creators is bad for the hobby. I don't think they are, because at the end of the day, it exposes more people to it, and people are the lifeblood of the hobby. It's really hard to play D&D by yourself unless we have a really disappointing conversation during the AI segment later. So I think exposure is key. Keeping people engaged and connected is key, because problems happen. Groups fall apart. People move away. And having the ability to connect with another group, whether it's paid or not, I think is a net benefit. Now, the other side is we need to do better. We need to make sure that there's some type of quality control, so that way I don't show up, like I said, I've got 10 years of GMing experience, and I'm still in my first year on Start Playing. I only have, double-digit reviews, but I could be garbage, right? And you have no real way of knowing that unless you either genuinely know one of the people who wrote a review and can say, hey, he's great, or you've seen a stream perhaps, and know you're going to like it.
And, this is, and I will put this disclaimer out there, I have no personal issues with Start Playing Games at all. I think they are good at what they do. In fact, no, they are great at what they do, otherwise they wouldn't be where they are. The problem is what they do in some areas is done incorrectly. Because when they started out, they went, you can be a professional GM, you can be a professional GM, you can be a professional GM. But they don't know them from Adam. They've just asked them to sign up to the website and advertise their game. They've shown them how to write an ad copy. They've shown them how to make, take a stock cover art and make it look pretty. but they haven't done or given any sort of instruction on how to be a professional GM, what it entails. They haven't outlined any kind of structure or guidance in that way. And this, for me, is the big problem with professional GMing and professional GMs in the industry. If you don't have the skills, if you don't have the qualifications, I don't care if you've been a GM for 2 years or 50 years. You could have been running role-playing games before Dungeons and Dragons was even properly conceived. I don't care. What I care is hours spent in your craft. I calculated that if a GM runs... if a GM runs for 40 years, one standard session, which is about 4 hours, let's be honest, one standard session a week for 40 years still only equates to about 8,000 hours of GM experience. Now, that's not including everything else outside of it, but even if you...
comparison for folks at home, that's like 4 years of a full-time, like 9-to-5 job, which in the professional industries is not that much.
No, not at all.
Intro-level jobs want 5 years experience.
Yeah, exactly. And, even if you sort of double it, and you go, okay, well, perhaps they spent an extra 4 hours a week on prep, reading, interacting with communities or whatever else. Okay, so we say 8 hours a week for 40 years. Well, in that case, they've still only done 16,000 hours. Now, I say only. It doesn't...
Right. It's a lot, but...
It is a lot, but it's not focused. It's bits and pieces here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can guarantee that if they have one group for 2 years, they probably miss about 8 or 9 sessions in those 2 years, on average, I would say, as a guesstimation. Like, when people aren't really committed, other things come up, and they have no real sense of guilt of letting people down in that way. And then, again, so average it out.
To this, an interesting caveat, though, is also it depends on your makeup, right?
Oh, yes.
You could run 4 campaigns over 40 years, right? Group of, players that, like, I'm in a game right now that's been going for 5 years. That's only 6 players. It's the same 6 players that, we see every week. But if you're someone that runs a bunch of one-shots, right? You run spend the same amount of time at the table, but you're seeing a multitude more people, more experiences, different, challenges and expectations. So yeah, it varies so widely.
Yeah. And, this is why when I talk to people, I go, okay, how many hours do you have? Oh, I have 30. No. Hours. Because I actually calculated my own mileage in this hobby, because I spend at least 4 to 5 hours a day, and have done for the last 13 years, looking into D&D stuff. And I calculated it at about 25,000 hours in 13 years. And it's all different, like, theories, different structures, different DMing styles, different storytelling styles, voice work, planning, writing, and it all adds up. And they say you have to spend 1,000 hours in order to master a craft, but that's a focused craft. That's something like wood carving.
Yes.
Whereas when you're DMing, you're wearing many different hats.
Right.
You're a storyteller. You're an actor.
A mediator.
You're a mediator. You're the tech guy. You're a game designer. You're
potentially a visual artist. At times.
You're a war gamer as well. And all these different skills, they add up to the mileage you actually need to be able to really call yourself experienced in the hobby. And that's my hot take that people aren't going to like. Because there's going to be people watching this that have been DMing for 15, 20 odd years, think they're experienced, when in actual fact they've maybe only done 6 hours a week with the same group over that 20 years, or a
But
handful of groups over that 20 years.
can I interject? So
Yeah.
this does it because it starts to sound like gatekeeping, right? And I don't think that's your intent, right? But is the
Probably not.
point
No,
you're
no,
making
absolutely
though
not.
is the way in which we present our experience for the creation of value, right?
Yes.
And right where I could say, right, I've been DMing for 10 years, but if all I've done is once a month with the same group of people, I in fact have not
Oh,
that much, right? I would not have that much experience, right?
give
So
me just give me just 2 seconds. I'm roboting.
oh,
Hold
okay.
on. My audio setup
Play
seems to be
that fervent
it
drift
seems to be playing games
intro
with me
bop
today,
to fill the
which is not what I wanted. Apologies for that. Folks, do not buy Fi Fine. I will tell you now, don't buy Fi Fine. I am back.
yeah. So right, and the point is, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you're trying to. You're not saying any speaking ill of people who have less
No,
experience, but it's
no,
that
no, no, no.
our current mechanisms don't properly relay, communicate level of experience in a way that allows you to be confident in that experience for a GM.
Yes,
So much of it
absolutely.
is one, it's you take it at face value. They say I have this experience, and so you have to believe it, and then pay in to get into the game and see if they're actually good. Maybe they're not. If you have a bad experience, now you are a person who says paid D&D is garbage. I spent $20 and this guy was terrible, and that experience is ruined for you now. But if you have maybe some type of mechanism for proving, for verifying, like, right, on Start Playing, right, we have verified reviews, which helps. It doesn't get you all the way there, but it helps because at least you can see that person has X number of reviews, at least for me, right? That tells me, hey, at least if folks are willing to pay again and again and again, there might be something there. It's not a guarantee, but it's better than nothing. But it isn't the
So,
level that you're talking, which is no. Joe Schmo actually has 25,000 hours, kind of like actually on roll 20, right? Roll 20
mhm,
keeps a metric for that of
yes.
hours that you've spent on the which again, sure, you could a lot of that could be dead time or not very useful, but it's something. It's another metric to say that Joe
Yes.
Schmo didn't start doing this yesterday because he saw a podcast that said, "Hey, you can make money DMing."
Yeah,
um,
no, absolutely. But my final point on this is no, I wasn't trying to rag on less experienced DMs at all. By all means, go out, learn, do as much as you can to perfect your craft. Do as, if you want to be the DM that is known for doing funny voices throughout your world, however you want that to appear to be, go out and work on your voice work. Go out and just focus that, just for maybe 6 months. And then when you've got that down, you won't have it down perfectly, but you will have it down. Then move on to, okay, what can I work on next? Mechanics. Let's get mechanics down. Okay, how can I make my game mechanically sound? Okay, fantastic. You've done that for maybe a year. And move on to something. Move on. Focused learning to improve your GMing is so important, because if you're trying to learn it all at once, you're not going to be learning very much.
How far out do you think we are from LinkedIn Learning or Google certificates for DM chops? Right, like I took the
There are
D&D voice
in
acting 10-hour course. Here's my
in
certificate.
in some respects, it's already in development.
Son of
I
a gun,
have
yeah.
Yeah, it's already in development. I've seen US universities actually trying to get dungeon master degrees going through, game master degrees going through in that
This
sense.
is the first I've heard of that. That is, I mean, that's it's
It
cool but
may
terrifying, right?
So disclaimer, it may be hearsay, because again, I read a lot, I watch a lot, and obviously not everything we read on the internet is trustworthy. However, this is what I have heard, and normally when I read these things, I do go and check 2 or 3 sources to make sure that I'm not being, hoodwinked into this in any sort of sense of the way. But anyway, so marketplaces, good or bad. Me, personally, I think they need better guardrails. I think we need better industry standards. We do need some form of standardization to this industry. That's what we are trying to do. I know Start Playing have started to implement some things. Are they good enough? We'll have to wait and see.
But what it can't, can I say though, I half jokingly brought up the point of like professional certifications, but I think that's what it can't become. But maybe that's a future conversation about universities offering programs, because then it does start having some real barriers to entry. If you have to get a degree, not have to, but to be a professional, DM, like now you've got a real barrier to entry. But I think of, I'm not a full-time DM, right? I do this outside of my day job where I'm a project manager, and the kind of go-to professional certification for me is a PMP, which is a project manager professional. And whatever you think about professional certifications, the fact of the matter is it's a barrier to entry. You have to have the time to take a course, to pay several hundreds of dollars for an exam that you take, and then even once you have the certification, you have to pay to continue it on. And that's exactly the model I would hate to see anything in this space go towards. And that's where I can empathize with the folks who were playing in the 80s and now hate to see the people who are paying to play. I think, right, it's that same progression. I would hate to see that, is this type of central authority and accreditor to say, if you don't pay the $50 fee to maintain your certification, right?
So I don't want that level of standardization,
No.
right? I don't want centralization, but I want standardization. I want experiences and expectations to be more clear when it comes to what you should expect from a professional GM.
Reliability, I think, is another word. Where standardization might scare people, it scares me, but reliability, I think, it's the same point.
Reliability, transparency as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a combat GM and you've got a player coming to you going, "Oh yeah, no, I really love the combat," don't take that player. Turn them away. Even if you're on your knees begging for players at that point, turn them away, because that's going to damage their perception of this industry.
If I'm going to go 3 sessions of just roleplay and no combat, they're going to hate it.
Yeah, and as a professional GM, we need our integrity. We need, as a group, as a demographic, need to maintain our integrity so that we can maintain some level of moral ground when we say to people, we are charging for an experience. Because otherwise we're charging for an ill-equipped experience, which is never fun. It's like charging to join a fishing competition, advertising that you're going to supply the fishing rods, and in fact you don't give them fishing rods, you just give them a pair of waders and a giant net.
It's like any industry, right? No different than if I call a plumber to my house and then find out that, they aren't equipped to do the job. I think, in any service, you want to make sure that you're getting what you pay for, and that you know what you're paying for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Let us move on to the next section.
I don't know if it's clear. I don't know the words yet. Bum bum ba da dum bum bum.
Yeah, something like that. Dum ba da da dum bum bum. Right. So yes. So running games and philosophy. Now there is a lot of chatter on the airwaves around this. A very, very good friend of mine and another content creator. He goes by Wolf the DM on TikTok, and otherwise known as Coach Wolf. Wolf with an E. Again, another professional dungeon master, a great guy, fantastic content. Do go and check him out if you get a chance. But he's been getting a lot of stick lately, because he absolutely loves and sticks to rules as written. And the rule of cool crowd, and again, this is going to come down to gatekeeping behaviors. Where you would expect it to come from the rules as written crowd, more often than not, it comes from the rule of cool crowd, from what I can see. And, what does it actually mean in practice to run rule as written versus rule of cool? And if you're running it, are you reducing player agency? So for me personally, I'm a bit of a mix of both. So I will stick to the rules as written as much as humanly possible. But if a player turns around to me and goes, "Hey, look, I'm at the top of this 50-foot tree. I can see this, this orc horde underneath me. Can I jump down 50 feet, thrusting my sword in a downward position and landing on them for a soft landing?" Yeah, sure, they'll take the full damage. You can roll for an attack with your sword. Just be aware that if you roll in that one, you're likely cutting your foot off. I think it's important that whilst the structure of running the rules as written is important, it is just as important to ensure that you are being a little flexible. You don't have to be completely rigid with the rules the entire time. If something sounds cool and it's going to bring a smile to somebody's face just as a one-off event, fine, go for it. As long as it's not affecting the game in any real mechanical way, then it's not going to be hurting the rules as written.
Right. I think this is going to sound political, but this is a hard question to answer because I don't think there is one answer, because D&D is so many different things at so many different tables that it's going to change. At scale, my answer is that the rules are a great framework, that they unify players, and we know what we're coming for, but it all comes down to expectations. If I expect to come and play D&D 5e and you tell me, oh, by the way, no spellcasters and no magic items, and you've eliminated half of the player's handbook. Is this 5e? Debatably. Is this a bad game? Not necessarily, if that's what a group of people want to play. And if you're not one of those people, it's the wrong table, right? So my style personally. Oh, go ahead.
Here's the thing with that argument, and I will put this to you in a question. If they are, for example, in your example, saying, right, we're not using spellcasters, we're not using magic, we're not using magical items, you can't have any flying characters, no monstrous races either, or exotic races, just humans, elves, and dwarves. At that point, surely you should just go find another system.
Right, and that's the argument I would make to that person, right? Is there are better systems for running Star Wars. There's a Star Wars RPG, but I've seen people try to run Star Wars in D&D 5th edition. Can you do it? Of course. And I'm not going to stop you. Follow your joy, but know that there are better tools for it. And that's what it is. The 5e rule set is a tool to facilitate a tabletop role-playing experience, right? I tend to stick very close to raw because I like that system, and what it does is offers consistency, right? And I talk a lot about expectations. Disappointment is when you have expectations and then reality does not meet them. And I think that's why consistency is so important. If I come to a game expecting that I can do this cool thing with my character because the rule book specifically says that it does not, we're not doing Air Bud. Oh, it doesn't say a dog can't play basketball. Not the opposite, not the negative, but because it says, hey, you're playing a class that has spell slots, that has access to the spell, this spell does that thing, and you're excited to do that. I want to hope that it's going to work the way that it's written to do so as a player. So that's how I'm going to run it as a DM. Now, if it becomes problematic, right, if we change things, but it's about expectations. That's why you have a session 0. You have a character guide, right? Like I said, I talk about Curse of Strahd. I recently found out that they changed the way the Daylight spell, level 3 spell, works in 2024. In 2014, it was kind of a poorly named spell because it's not sunlight. It's just regular light. Well, sunlight's a very specific thing if you're playing with vampires. They don't care about regular light, but sunlight's very harsh on them. Well, the 2024 version of that spell now specifies that it is daylight. This is a module that was not written or balanced for players to have access to practically at will, daylight whenever they want, deployable sunlight as early as level 5. So I had to say to my players, hey, we're not there yet, but I just recently found out about this, so I want to clarify in my game we are using the 2014 version. Even if some use 2024, 2014 characters, I let both. I have no problem with either. But when you find those issues that are going to either derail the game, right? If it happens outside a session, great. If it happens you do your best to roll with the punches, and I think, process that after the fact. I am a big rule of cool person. I know it sounds dumb because I just said I like raw, but the important is consistency, right? If I let you do it, I need to let everyone else do it. And the world that I'm running that hopefully is acting reasonably would probably do it too. I just saw a question in my Discord about how they want to steal this magical item from this enemy they just encountered. They bet with some checks they could pull this off of her arm, this bracer, right? And my initial thought is, I don't think we have a rule for pulling off an equipped magical and attuned magical item. So I'm not going to immediately tell you no, but I want you to be aware that if this is something you really want to do, I'll design a mechanic to do it, but the enemies can do it too. Do you want to open that door? And I'm not saying you can't, but know that, okay,
Doors
cool.
work two ways.
Strahd's gonna steal the amulet or the sword from you, and he has a much better athletics bonus than you do. So that sounds like me trying to prohibit it in a roundabout way, but it's just about consistency, right? Is if you let one character do it or one side do it, then the other side needs
the other way.
And if they're fine with that and they like that high risk, high reward gameplay, then we're going to do it. We're going to roll with that. Maybe they're going to see this and they're going to hold me to it.
But this does bring us very nicely actually onto the next question. Now we are going to be going for a break in about 10-15 minutes, roughly, approximately. So what we will do is we'll stop when it comes to the break. We will be stopping the live stream and then coming back 20 minutes later. So don't fret, we haven't crashed, we haven't gone anywhere, but when we do hit time, I need a break. There's things I need in my system that I cannot do on the stream, unfortunately. And no, it's nothing illicit or otherwise, it is just...
Mine is.
Don't tell us that.
I got it.
No, it's all right. Running strict raw. So this is for the GMs out there who run only rules as written, and you are running as strictly as you can to the rules. Is this taking away player agency, do you think?
I'm going to say no. And it's going to be the same old argument of it's player expectations, right? I think so long as you have communicated before the game starts, this is a game where we run the rules as written as close as we can, right? And furthermore, right, this is how I will deal with discrepancies at the table. If I tell you, we don't know a rule, we're not going to look it up and I'm going to wing it, that's what we're going to do. Or are we going to take a minute each time to look up the exact wording of that spell? Does that spell have a somatic component? Is it touch? Do you, can you yada, yada, yada? What are the rules for holding your breath? Okay, it's, Constitution modifier minutes, damn. Something like that. If the group is committed to playing it raw and they're okay with dedicating the time to facilitate that and look up things as needed, then I think that's fine. In terms of agency, right, we are all working within the same system. If I can't, I don't think that stops you from doing anything. It just dictates how you can do it, right? Like you can still go out and, I'm trying to think of what's an example of when my player agency would be kneecapped by raw. Maybe it's the example I already made. I want to steal this item off of someone, but I think there's a difference between wanting to and being able to, right?
Yes.
I have free will. I want to be able to fly like Superman. That doesn't mean I can in the real world, right? I'm saying, right? Like I
Yeah,
still have
and you have to.
agency.
Yeah, and
The,
this is the thing. Like, and again, we've spoken a lot about consistency, and if one thing's true for another. Actually, you touched on something very important there because you have obviously the mechanical rules of D&D 5e. But how many GMs do you know? And I don't know that many when I've played in games that actually think about the metaphysical laws of their world. And a lot of the arguments for this is, oh, well, it's fantasy, it's not that deep, bro. Well, my response to that is, well, actually, yes, it should be that deep. It should be that reasonable to suspect that even in a world with high magic, dragons, and gods that can warp the elements at will, that there has to be some kind of metaphysical laws. There has to be a law to define, how much of this, how much this can be used. And one prime example of this is spell slots.
right,
Spell slots are essentially a metaphysical law. They
right,
are an analog version of your spellcaster's energy,
right.
will,
And
charisma, whatever it is they're
yeah,
using to cast it. That is the analog for how much of this energy they can physically use before their body starts to give out.
right. So, oh, man, this is an interesting topic, right? Because I think it's a slippery slope of trying to get into metaphysical properties of the world. I agree that they're important and they're interesting, but I think the story should dictate the metaphysical principles, not the other way around. Because
Ooh.
so if yeah, right, because right, think about that, like use spell slots, right? It is a representation. It is not abstract. It's a concrete representation of an abstract concept of there is the weave and there is Mistra, and she imparts magic upon this world, and you may learn to use it, but your capacity is limited in the same way that your physical abilities are limited. You can only run so long before you grow tired. We have exhaustion to represent that as a mechanic. We have spell slots to represent how long you can cast, right? But if you start to do it the opposite and say, well, I have 3 level 2 slots and 4 level 1 slots, so I can make a conversion rate. So that means I have X number, like you're inventing the spell points variant rule and saying, because metaphysically, these are quantifiable, right? Like, I don't think that works. I don't think that's fun for anyone, and it ruins things. I think of, let's take it back a little bit much simpler, jumping, right? There is a rule that tells you how high and how far your character can jump in a high jump or a long jump. I once was actually, as a player, at a table where someone then said, well, if I can jump this high, we can use Pythagorean's theorem to find that I can actually jump further than this. And it's like, no, the answer is the rules tell you how far you can jump. Because if we have to bust out Pythagorean's theorem, which we could say, well, there's physics in this world, and we are really missing the forest for the trees. The rules are there to simplify the game so that way we
Yes.
can spend more time on playing and less time on the DM adjudicating. And
Yes.
that's where I think, you got to let the narrative serve the rest.
I'm going to do what you do. There we go. It's all right, because I just realised I've got a really long name tag and an itty bitty living space.
My taller chair will be here for next time.
So here's the thing, right? Metaphysical laws. In my worlds, my own homebrew worlds, the metaphysical laws do dictate some of the rules for the characters. And the players are already well aware of these facts before they even come into the campaign.
Mhm.
So, for example, in my high fantasy campaign, fate and destiny are as abstract a concept to that world as it is to our own. Like, no one has control over fate and destiny. but
Okay.
there are still gods. And when we think of gods, we think of all-powerful beings that can change the world at will. There is nothing that binds them. And
Except
so,
for all the things that bind them.
yeah. And, in this particular world, Eulalia, a world of dragons, high fantasy, and grim dark fantasy, depending on the time period you're in, it's the ley lines. The ley lines are what give mortal people, power. But it only gives those people power if they have a following. If those people are following, the ley lines follow the belief. They feel the individual that is being given that belief, and then they become almost like an explosive capsule, ready to implode because they've absorbed too much of this leylonic energy, and so they have to put it somewhere. And at that point, they have to cross into the celestial realm in order to be able to release that energy, otherwise they go off like a nuclear bomb. And when they're in the celestial realms, they are able to harness this power and use it to influence, but not control,
Mm-hmm.
the material plane.
Okay.
And where this comes into the players is, for example, the ley lines control the magic. The ley lines are where all casters draw magic from. If something happens to those ley lines, if there is an interruption in the flow, or if they are
It's
overflowing
the
for whatever
magical power
reason,
grid, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And in the grim dark setting, if they are in one area, they could be rolling on a wild magic table. They could be casting every spell with advantage. They could be upcasting spells by using a level 1 spell to level 3. But likewise, there will be areas in which they can't cast any spells. And again, it's how your world building affects the mechanical elements of the game. And when you're doing something like that, you do have to be considerate of the fact that, okay, this is going to change the mechanics of 5e, but it's not going to change it enough to become or warrant being a new system.
Yeah, it's fair. And I agree. I still think that's what you described as an instance of story dictating the metaphysical properties and therefore the mechanics, right? And
Yes.
I jive with that. If someone takes issue with that and doesn't like it, like, then that's not the game for them. And I think that's kind of all there is to it. Like, yeah, it's just, and right, it's people, I have to imagine going into that game understand that this uses a different type of kind of magical system, right? Like, no one's shocked in session 2 when they go to do something on their character sheet. Well, maybe they're shocked in a narrative sense, right? Like, oh
Oh
no,
yeah.
we've wandered too far away from the wayline, or we're in a, some kind of area of flux that, anti-magic, yada yada yada. They might be shocked in character, but the players aren't shocked because you have spelled out how this works, developed a system, and communicated it. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we do for everything. And if you fail to do something, in advance, you set a precedent and you try to follow that. And if you have consistency, I think you're going to have a better time.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, one very, very last thing before we do go to the break, okay? And this one is going to be a little bit this one is going to be a little bit touchy for a lot of people, I think. Are some players using agency to mean I want to get away with what I want to do? And I think they do. Quite a lot of times I've had players say, oh, you're taking away my player agency. No, no. I'm not stopping you from trying to do what you want to do, but I am telling you, you can't do that. It does not exist, or it is beyond the realms of possibility. Taking you back to your Superman analogy. Oh, I want to be able to fly like Superman. Great, play an Aarakocra.
Yep.
It's
like, about
no,
the
but I
closest
want
you'll get
no, but I
within
want to.
the confines of this system
Yeah,
that we're using.
yeah,
Yeah, oh man, I think the example I would look to would be, a player wanting to become a lich and betray the party, right? And sacrifice them. Like, is there potential for some really cool narrative drama there? Yes. Is it right for every game? Hell no.
I would argue it's not right for most tables.
Yeah, most,
because
right.
most tables would not handle
Right.
that well.
Right. And PvP is a whole nother conversation, and at the lower level, it's, this is the kleptomaniac character that is always stealing from the party or not sharing. Like, that's fine. It comes down to expectations, right? Like in almost all of my games, unless that is a theme that we want to lean into, that kind of subterfuge and deception, there is a caveat that, I don't care what character ancestry you're playing, or species we say now, or the species you're playing, class you're playing, deity you serve. You can be it's hard, but you can be an evilly aligned character. I also don't tend to actually really use alignment that much. I say let your gameplay decide your alignment, not your alignment decide your gameplay. But to do so is going to be hard, because one of the requirements that I have, though, is your character has to be motivated to be a part of this party and share the common goal that is core to whatever the story is. And the classic Curse of Strahd, it's you have to have a reason to work with this party and want to get out of Barovia alive, right?
Yeah,
so your character can't be, seeking out the ability to become a lich and kill the party. And a lot of times you'll talk about lycanthropy comes up. And it's like, well, what if they want to embrace being a werewolf? Like, there are systems for that, and that could be really cool. And if the characters want to do that and have that risk and reward, and the party's okay with it, cool, fine. We have agency. We have found equilibrium. We can try and do that. There are other, systems or guidelines or tables that may say, no, to become a werewolf is to be evil, because you're embracing wanting to murder other humanoids, because that's what the werewolf does when it wolfs out. And to do so is then in contrast with the original clause, which is this story is about a group of heroes. That is not heroic. That is, at that point, that character becomes an NPC and you need to bring in a new character. And that's happened. I've seen that happen in my games and other games in both ways, where it was planned. Like, I had a player who, at a specific place later in that campaign, sought out some dark powers and was like, yeah, I want to do this, fully knowing that he would lose his character and he would become an evil antagonist when he succeeded in that endeavor. And he loved that. He thought that was cool. We all loved it. It was a great turn. It's like, oh no, and he had a reason to pursue that. It wasn't out of left field. But again, it's so you have that agency so long as the expectation has been set in the beginning of, this is what is available to you. This is what the story is. These are the requirements to be in this party for the story that we are telling. There are other stories where we can do other things, but this one is about this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, gals, non-binary pals, we are going to go and have a very, very short reprieve. And I don't see a pause button on this podcast software, so what we are going to have to do is stop the stream, stop the podcast. We will be back very sharply at 20 to the hour, depending on where you are in the world. For me in the UK, that's 20 to 1 in the morning. For my friends in the US, that is going to be 20 to 8. Thank you very much.
On the
I
East
can't do
Coast,
math.
at least.
Yeah, 20 to 8 on the East Coast. And obviously then it's going to be 20 to 5 on the West Coast. So we will be back very, very shortly. Go grab yourselves a drink. Go use the little boy or little girl or the gender neutral toilets if you need to. And we will be right back. Until then, just enjoy this very short pop, just for 2 minutes. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Just whilst we wait for Brian to return, I do have a few announcements from Fervent Drift Productions Limited. Now, first off, our professional GM marketplace is very, very close to launch, so do keep your eyes out for that one. We are aiming to be the first quality-assured professional Game Master marketplace out there, making sure that the GMs are actually delivering on the experiences that they promise you. Secondly, we have our small book of Goblinkin on pre-launch on Kickstarter. Do go and check that one out. If you go to our link tree, which should be in our bio, you will see all the links for that there. We have also released a line of goblin-specific lines, which are absolutely incredible. I'm very, very proud of them. We have children's t-shirts, men's t-shirts, women's t-shirts will be coming out, but we also have done something very unique and released a China plate set with our characters from the Goblin Kin book. Which is, they look incredible. I'm not even kidding. They absolutely do look incredible, and you can get them. You can get them on little stands. You can get them to hang on the walls.
I'm a goblin enjoyer, and am 5 years into playing a pair of a hobgoblin goblin brothered combo with a buddy, elegantly named Shank and Bitch Slap. But they're classy guys. So this is really exciting to hear. I'm very excited to see all your
Yes.
goblinoid stuff.
If you do want to go and see that, head over to anchoranviltabletop.com, and that you will see those lines and the link to our Kickstarter there as well. I think that's all for the announcements that I have at this moment in time. I probably have forgotten something, but again, there'll be a reminder at the very, very end of the podcast tonight. Welcome back, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I also just realized I made a mistake in saying those character names because my daughter is now watching upstairs. She was very excited to see Daddy on the TV. Hi, kids. Hi, Clara. Hi, James. Hi, Ellie.
You're sleeping on the sofa tonight.
Please excuse the bad words that Daddy says.
Do you know what? I learned something very, very young. Those who swear are generally a little higher up on the intelligence scale because they have an expanded vocabulary. At least that's what I tell myself, and it gives me that sense of, do you know what? I feel good about this.
I think they're just being genuine with you, honest, when we're not afraid of those 4-letter words.
Yeah, absolutely. So
what's our next topic?
The next topic we are going to be covering is safety, culture wars, and community tension. And we are going to start off, and again, this comes courtesy of the individual that I mentioned earlier on, and I will explain a bit more in a minute, is why is player safety still so controversial? Why is it so hard to take into consideration that there are certain topics that people may or may not want to cover in their games, and why is it so important that we disclose those topics? And the topic that brought this one to my attention was in fact a big one. It was slavery. Now, slavery for me is something that we should if you want to explore that part of your heritage, if you are from a descendancy, or if you are descended from that particular group of people that experience that, and you want to explore the social, political, and economical impacts of that through tabletop role-playing games, by absolutely all means do so, but also disclose this. Do it tastefully, do it respectfully for those who actually endured it. And no, this isn't a white guy telling people to go suck eggs. This is a white guy that actually acknowledges that it is a horrendous, horrendous thing that still exists in some parts of the world today, that, it shouldn't be taken lightheartedly. It shouldn't be a throwaway, oh, it's just a fantasy game. No, it's a fantasy game, but it's a subject that has real-world implications, and those real-world implications may not want to be disclosed, discovered, or explored by individuals, especially of particular cultures. Because when we really think about it, it's some people's great-grandparents or even their grandparents that would have experienced this.
Right. And even if you've not, even in not just that topic, but any topic that could make someone uncomfortable if it came up in game, be it slavery, sexual assault, murder, right? Violence.
Absolutely.
It's, or kidnapping, right? Like there's such a wide array of things that could come up in a fantasy role-playing game that could make someone uncomfortable. And I think that when we talk about like kind of culture war controversy, I think I shouldn't say because, right? But I think when we typically refer to these things as trigger warnings, that is the thing that tends to, I think, trigger in the people who decide they don't want to be okay with that to say this is bad or this is woke. I didn't think I was going to say it, but I said it. But the point is, I think at the easiest level is the point of D&D is to have fun, right? It is a shared storytelling experience. It is meant to be entertainment. It is meant to be joyful. Why would you want to actively make that less fun for someone if you don't have to?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think there's a difference between someone saying, oh no, I'm non-confrontational, we shouldn't ever get in combat, and hey, let's not please have these particular topics in game, or more likely, not that we don't have them, but let's not focus on them, seek them out, glorify them, right? The drow have slaves. It is a canonical fact. That doesn't mean that we should have a campaign that is focused around, players engaging with that in a way that would be supportive of it, right? Like that would be awful. And I think most reasonable human beings can agree with that.
But I mean, even then, for some people, it's just existing in a world is too much, and we have to be respectful of that. A prime example would,
we don't have to be, but if we don't, the consequence is that people are likely not going to want to play in your game if you're not respecting the community and your players. You don't have to please everyone, but you have to have a group of people who want the same thing out of the experience.
Yes, absolutely. And, for me as somebody who is late diagnosed autistic, late diagnosed ADHD, and, I got the trifecta because I have a PDA profile attached to my ASD, it's almost like the village idiot trope. That was very much autistic people's reality in the past. Oh yeah, he's just a village idiot. Don't pay no mind to him. He just rambles about random things. But actually what he was rambling about were his special interests, things he'd watched, witnessed, or noticed, and observed, and then told he was mad for it. Take Darwin as an example, one of the most historical, revolutionary scientists of his time. He was treated like the village idiot because he believed in evolution. He didn't believe in evolution as it exists today, no. He believed that, for example, animals would keep stretching, for example, giraffes would keep stretching their necks in order to elongate them to reach the top branch of the tree.
The idea that we adapt and change to our environment in some way.
It was a bizarre vision of what we understand evolution to be today, because today we understand that it's a slow process. It takes hundreds of millions of years, and Darwin, on his deathbed, so fearful because of religion at the time, renounced his belief in evolution. Or denounced, sorry. He said, oh, I was making it all up, it doesn't actually exist. But obviously it had already been documented. But he denounced it on his deathbed, and I think that's really sad. And, it's, again, coming back to D&D and coming back to that side of things, I have village idiots, but I make them fun, exciting, engaging characters. I have a character who is a traveller. He's called Hoddo. He is a wild alchemist. He is a wild magic alchemist. He doesn't have a clue what his potions do. And there's a reason for that. Identify doesn't know what his potions do. Because if two people drink the same potion, they have different effects. And, he doesn't understand the concept of money and e-commerce or commerce. He doesn't understand economics. He doesn't understand supply and demand. He just understands, I have this really fun thing that I love, and I want to share it with you, but I need to live. And that is his whole persona.
So you've got this this interesting character that brings this mechanic to the game, right? This cool kind of gamble of, let me try these potions. Like, that's a fun thing. But I think, right, the point you bring this up for is he might be interpreted as a tokenization of someone with developmental disabilities.
Yes.
And I can't imagine that's your intent.
Oh, no, I'll be honest with you. It absolutely was.
Okay.
It absolutely was. Because, again, although I'm only recently diagnosed, I've had this character for years. And the reason I've had this character is because he is an exaggerated part of myself.
Okay.
Yeah. He is my inner child, essentially. He is the child that I wish I could have been. You know, sharing my special interests with everyone and anyone. And, you know, excitable, energetic, happy, you know, doesn't really pay mind to the negative comments that come his way. Kind of completely oblivious to the size and the indignations of characters, and they go, "Oh no, not Hoddo." Right. You know, so he's oblivious to that.
But so you have this really personal connection with this character, this really elegant way to explain his presence and purpose in this world and why he is represented in the way he is. But the question is, how do we respond to criticism when characters in our world that we don't identify with personally appear to be or accused of ill representation of certain real life cultures or people, or tokenizing them?
I mean, I think to a degree, yes, we have to be aware. We can't remain ignorant. If we do something that upsets somebody, we have to understand the difference between impact versus intent. You know, if we do something that upsets somebody, we go, "Oh, I'm really, really sorry that upset you. You know, that wasn't my intention, but I understand that's not the point. The point is that this has impacted you in some way, and I would like to make that right for you." You know, and it's not about. Again, I'm going to hit all the grognards right where it hurts now. It's not about being woke. Because if you think it's about being woke, you don't understand what being woke is. The term being woke comes from the minority black community to mean that you are awake.
Yes.
You see what is happening. You see the systemic oppression of certain groups of people in the world today. And, you know, do I think that the systemic oppression today is akin to that of, say, the 1910s, the 1920s, or even the late 1800s? No, not in the slightest. It's nowhere near it.
It's not a pissing contest, right?
No, exactly. Does it still exist? Absolutely. Does it affect real lives? Yes. You know, again, as a disabled neurodivergent individual, I have, in the last, 2 months, 3 months, realized just how hard my life has been because I was undiagnosed. And I was treated as just like everybody else, but my brain doesn't respond like everybody else. And, you know, again, this is why I question, why is it so controversial to say to somebody, "Hey, I really don't feel comfortable with this subject matter." If somebody turns around to me, right, and said to me, "Look, I really don't like Hoddo. I think he's a poor concept of a character," my answer to them wouldn't be, "Oh, well, stuff you because of X, Y, Z." I would then go into a deeper conversation as to why this character exists, who this character really is, why he is the way he is. Because ultimately, he is, and I'm not going to give away the spoiler I was just about to give away, just in case my players are watching this, but he is meant to be far more than the eyes can see. And that's the whole point of Hoddo. And, you know, yes, he comes across as a very stereotypical type of character, but it's fully intentional, which is why it's so exaggerated. It's not stereotypical to the point of this is who he is. It's stereotypical. Sorry, it's not stereotypical to the point of oh, he is visibly autistic or he is visibly ADHD. It is stereotypical to the point of exaggeration, which is what makes it satirical, which is what makes it funny, which is what
Mhm.
makes people like me associate and relate to him. And, this is the point. At what point do we say, okay, there is a fine line between comedy satire
Mhm.
and punching down?
Mhm.
At what point do we acknowledge that we are approaching that line and stop?
It's funny. This term. It's funny that Simpsons have done everything. They've been on air long enough,
Oh, yeah.
and that a term in character design was coined called Flanderization. I've not seen the show enough to speak elegantly about it, but Ned Flanders
Yes.
is a neighbor character, right? And the point being that over time, the qualities that were unique to him got more and more exaggerated to where he was practically not the same character at the end, and not in like a character growth kind of way. In a,
Yeah.
this is, we're magnifying these traits. So that became a term that's used in character design, right? Is where if you just keep doubling down on a character concept and that's all your character becomes, you're flanderizing. I'm probably saying it wrong.
Flanderizing, yeah.
Flanderization. Flanderizing that character, and I think that's important that you avoid that concept. Is that character is not, he is more than the behaviors that you've described, right?
Yes.
He is not just a representation of someone that's neurodivergent. I think, on the flip side, we look at maybe someone who might be upset that, the opposite, right? We talked about, here's the thing in my game that maybe someone doesn't like. How do I respond to that? But what about, the opposite is, I expect something in this game and you tell me it's not going to be here because it's going to impact someone else in the game. Why are you doing that? That's bad story writing, or insert whatever political ideology you want to assign it to. But I think the question there is, with those people who take issue with that, with the concept of having conversations about trigger warnings, or yes, maybe slavery exists in this game because the drow do that, but it's not something that we're going to be looking at closely. We're not going to be showing it because it's been identified as a trigger warning.
And it's going to have lines and veils, and it's going to be alluded to, but we're not going to address that right now, kind of thing. We need to have a deeper conversation about, okay, what parts of this are you okay with, what parts are you not okay with, and how can we adjust the story so that it's more befitting that topic of conversation.
I think it's the same thing with a lot of things. Any source of trauma that characters, NPCs, or even playable characters will undoubtedly have, right? Because we want to write characters that are complex and deep and feel rooted in reality. I think those things can, when appropriate, come to surface and be discussed at large if that's what the party wants. But ultimately, it doesn't have to be front and center. You don't have to do a flashback or describe the traumatic SA experience that character had. It's more than enough to know that, they've had this traumatic experience, and perhaps that's why they feel a certain way, they act a certain way, they say certain things. And I think that's enough for storytelling. Or I think of Brandon Lee Mulligan has a really funny clip where he's being interviewed about, romance in a game. That I've had players try to initiate certain things, and then other players say, "Hey, that made me uncomfortable. I really don't want, any kind of, I don't want to role play romantic interest." And of course, that's fine, right? But it takes a conversation between, those characters or those players to understand what the folks want out of the game. I brought up Brandon Lee Mulligan because he talks about sometimes smooching happens in the game, but that doesn't mean we need to put it in front of everybody.
Yes.
We can simply say that smooching happens.
Yes.
And not role play it.
So I actually had a situation in one of my games not too long ago. It was a few months ago now that the campaign eventually dissolved, unfortunately. But what I had these two characters, and weirdly enough, everyone always talks about, oh, it's the guys, it's the guys, it's the guys. This was the two girls at the table, and they, that in from one of them was playing a male character, the other was playing a female character, and she was playing a himbo basically.
Yeah.
And essentially, they did flirting and everything else, and she said basically this character is meant to be a womanizer. I said, oh, okay, that's an interesting choice. There were funny things that happened, like an unexpected marriage to to somebody who had a claim to the crown of the kingdom they were in, and things like this
I'm
happened.
sure
And
there were
they
no
were like,
political ramifications for that.
and they were like, hold on, I don't feel. I didn't want to get married to you, and the script was flipped on this particular womanizer character, in that this very dominating female character had essentially tricked and coerced them into marriage, and we sort of explored how that unraveled, and it unraveled within the session. And eventually there's these other two characters, these two player characters, who had been flirting and having a relationship throughout the campaign. And it came to a head, as you would expect, not to make the pun too obvious there, but and they took it to
Daughters watching this. I'm kidding.
that's why I'm using double
I'm kidding.
entendre.
They're probably not anymore. They put Miss Rachel back on, I'm sure.
Well, the viewer count hasn't changed, so but yeah, they took it to a bush and they went and scene, and they did it really tastefully.
But because everyone was on board with that, it was cool and it was good, and I'm sure it was a memorable moment for those players. Similarly, right, in that 5-year campaign I talked about, we have two female players playing female characters who have slowly but surely developed like an in-game romance, and it's subtle, but it's powerful every time there's a moment for that. And it's because it's subtle. It's not in your face. Like when one mentions during a stressful moment that she goes up and just silently holds the other one's hand, like it hits us because of that subtle storytelling that's been going on in this case for so long. So yeah, I think it's like everything else. If I could have a motto for every Reddit post, where someone says about a problem they had in their campaign, the answer is to have a conversation. Talk with your DM, talk with your players, and if someone's not comfortable with something, like don't be the reason
right?
that someone else does not have fun at D&D. And if you can't have fun without that, I think you need to do a little bit of reflection, or simply find a different table that's a better fit for you, where whatever theme you're chasing is cherished.
So I mean, I always say that not every player is going to be for every DM, and not every DM is going to be for every player. But with that said, there are also limitations. There are also things that we shouldn't even be contemplating exploring at the table, let alone, throwing it out there for everybody to see. And I've seen... I always tell people that my first DM was every Reddit horror story wrapped into a single person. And that's not even an exaggeration. There were things he done that you just shouldn't do in any kind of social situation that he done. And I think I was in that game for no more than 4 sessions. This was my first D&D experience. I nearly ran from the hobby completely.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, if this is what every game's going to be like, I don't want to do it. And then I realised, well, hang on a minute. If every game's like this, I can do a job blindfolded that will knock the socks off of everyone. And again, it comes down to, why is it so controversial just to respect somebody's wishes and boundaries? Why does somebody else saying, I don't want to play at this table because of XYZ, why is that a problem for you? Why is that so?
I might. So again, this is me trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah,
right? For
go
good
for it.
conversation, we want to try and understand, where do those concerns come from? Why, in what way can they be valid, so we can try to be constructive and helpful and either create a teachable moment for that person or part ways if we're of such differing minds. And I think about the conversation on privilege, right? This is a hard concept for a lot of people like me, not me personally, because I understand it, but for me to understand. I remember explaining actually to a friend's mom, who was a really hard working woman. She worked in construction and now works in IT. Just a truly hardworking, single mother of a woman. So to be told that, X or Y is a challenge for a different group of people that is not her response was, well, do they think that my life was easy? Like, I had to work really hard. And I explained to her that, privilege is not saying that your life is easy, right? Privilege is simply explaining that a certain factor of your existence didn't make your life harder. Others might have, but this one did not. And that's where we get the blank privilege, X privilege, Y privilege, yada, yada, yada. And I think the same concept can kind of be applied here, right? Is if, why can't I have this or that theme in my game? Why do I have to tiptoe around a theme? It's not a big deal, but just, it may not be a big deal to you, but it might be a big deal to them. And there doesn't have to be a parallel. You're going to meet someone somewhere that says, I'm okay with anything. Nothing's going to make me uncomfortable. Literally you could put anything in this game and I'd be fine with it. So I don't think you can just say like, you may be uncomfortable with this, they may be uncomfortable with that. Let's avoid, I think it's more than that, because even if you're comfortable with everything, right, that doesn't mean that everyone else has to be. And again, like, why would you want to be the reason for someone else to be uncomfortable or feel hurt or to remember trauma? When the goal of this game, while it's many things, at the end of the day, is entertainment. I don't, we use a lot of analogies about restaurants, but, I'm not going to go to an Outback Steakhouse and ask why I can't have dog steaks. Just because I would be perfectly fine. I would not be perfectly fine eating dog. I don't even want to finish the soundbite. I don't want to get misquoted. I've had kangaroo before, right? It's in Australia. It's common. It's like deer. Some people wouldn't want to eat it. I don't go to an Outback Steakhouse and ask and be upset that they aren't serving kangaroo steaks just because I'm comfortable eating. Sure, it's more supply chain issue, I'm sure. But if I were to make a stink about it as if it were some type of social issue, people would look at me like I was an idiot. Because I would be. So yeah, sorry. A bit of a rant on that one, but like, be kind to your fellow humans. It's, I think, not too much to ask.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But here comes, again, it comes down to, is it a generational thing? Are they, is it, I've played D&D for years, this is the lore I know, and now they're changing it all to make others feel more comfortable with.
Okay.
If they're uncomfortable with this and they come up to it, maybe they should just find a different game to play altogether, And is it about, why is it that, do you think that it's, some of the older generation, otherwise known as grognards, that have this kind of attitude towards people exploring different things within their beloved game?
I think this does come down to privilege, actually. Now, I'm glad I made that example, because now we say, is this a generational difference? And I want to clarify. I don't think this is a Gen Z versus millennials versus Gen X versus baby boomers thing, right? Generations are a marketing thing. I think this is simply a linear progression of time. And as time goes on, we as a human society are learning more. Voices are being amplified that historically have had no opportunity to have their stories told. Things that, I'm sorry, I'm going to use your diagnosis here. I worked a lot in the DD community, but, people say, well, man, all these, autism diagnoses are coming out of the woodwork. There's so many more nowadays. That didn't exist when I was younger. It's like, no, your uncle who had a room in his house dedicated for trains and ate the same lunch for 40 years was just eccentric.
Yeah,
it was always
absolutely.
there. We just understand things better now, and we
So,
have the communicational networks
so
to tell those
just to
stories.
interject there slightly, because
Yeah.
you do actually raise a huge point. So we now know that there is a genetic element to neurodivergent difficulties, and I don't like using the words extremes, okay, because autism isn't a line, it's not even a circle, it's more like a sphere. Like, if you ever played 3D Tetris, you'll understand exactly what I mean. It's that
It's
kind
almost
of,
not a very helpful term
yeah.
because it can vary
Um,
so much.
yes, exactly. But there are commonalities, and there are enough commonalities to it to go, okay, yes, this is what one brain looks like if it's just got this part. There's this brain that looks like this because it's got this part, and they're actually discovering that autism and ADHD have sub differences. They can't call them sub diagnoses yet because they haven't been defined, but they are finding that, the reason why we call it a spectrum is because we don't understand the nuance of the different types of autism and ADHD yet. But anyway, the point I was going to make is, my dad, rest his soul, I said to my mum maybe 5-6 years ago, and I said to her, without being disrespectful, just in case some people are watching, I said to her, I think I'm autistic, and she went, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not autistic. You're not ADHD. You're not this. You're not that. But yet, my dad, and I look back now knowing what I know, my dad had one chair. Okay, he had a chair and a sofa. The chair was his chair. You daren't sit in his chair. If you sat in his chair, it was a play fight for the chair. My dad would phone his own landline, leave himself a voicemail to remember to write something down when he got home into his diary so he didn't forget the next day.
Well, that's just intuitive use of the technology available.
But you know what I mean.
But the point is, right, that item was so important that he had to do that for something like journaling. It wasn't a reminder to, shut down the hose for winterization.
He would put it in his calendar, in his diary, in his calendar. But it was, I look back, and it was things like, if you dropped biscuit crumbs on his floor, he would get down on his knees. He wouldn't use a dustpan and brush. He'd get down on his knees and make sure he picked up every single crumb with the edge of his finger. Like, he'd press the crumb into his finger to pick it up.
Yeah.
And all these little things.
I'm guessing, not diagnosed with autism.
Well, he passed away 6 weeks ago, and he was 89. So,
yeah,
he was 89 years old. So he was of a generation where it didn't exist.
Right. I'm saying it's not that it did not exist. It's that we early enough didn't have a term for it. Later on, still didn't know very much about it. Further than that, it wasn't visual enough. We are known well enough, right? It wasn't communicated and understood academically, right? So it's this progression of time of human understanding that I think applies to all of these things, right? And that includes understanding of systems of oppression that find our way into our culture, our folklore, our stories, in which people are represented in ways that at the time were normal for we'll call the in-group and the out-group, in-group versus out-groups. I'll use the example Curse of Strahd, right? I think this is the one that had the controversy where they rewrote it. I hope it's okay that I say this term for academic uses because I'm not using it in a derogatory sense, but
That's fine.
the Vistani people are folks who are Eastern European inspired. They travel nomadically in wagons and have flowy clothing. And if you watched Hunchback of Notre Dame as a kid, you would say that these were probably gypsies. Now,
Yes.
this term, we later come out to, I say the uninformed people who were not of Romani descent find out this term was used to hurt and oppress these people. And, oppression, this is nothing new, right? Since humans have had communicational networks, the royal we have used containers, boxes to categorize other people to dehumanize them so that way we can then oppress them in certain ways, right? It's much in the way you look at the propaganda that was released in World War II during the Holocaust, and you convince the in-group that the out-group, at that time the Jews, are in some way subhuman so that way you can justify doing monstrous things. So I take it back, right?
And it uses, they also use dehumanizing language. They don't
Right.
even refer to them as people.
Right.
They refer to them as, monsters or aliens or invaders or, strangers. They never actually humanize it. And, without going too far into politics, because
that's as far as I was going to go with that story.
I will avoid going any deeper than this. Look at what is happening. Look at the language that is being used now. If I didn't use this moment to really point this out to people, I would be negligent in my position as a human being. But it doesn't matter where you are in the world right now. Look at the language your governments are using, and that is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, look at the language that is being used.
How is an event that happens in two different places might be communicated very differently in an attempt to manipulate your feelings on the item. And so the reason why I brought this up, right, is so we have this example of the representation of people in a D&D module. The Vistani people, they're very much coded as the Romanis, and they've historically been called what we now find out is it's a racial slur, right? It is a term that was used to harm those people. And those who are close to the issue or have familial ties or maybe have taken a class on European history are familiar with this and start pointing it out and saying, hey, that's not cool. And admittedly, I can't remember if there was pushback at first or not, but the point is eventually Wizards of the Coast did the right thing. And they said, hey, in the future, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to use that word. And that's the only responsible response to anything in this realm, right? Of finding out new information, like finding out, like, and again, this is where people have political feelings, right? Is I found out that the master bedroom, a term we use in North America, I don't know if you use it in the UK, but it's the bedroom where the mom and the dad sleep in a house. It's the biggest and nicest bedroom. Little did I know until probably a decade back that term comes from, the era in which people owned slaves in the U.S. So when someone says, hey, maybe we stop using that terminology and start calling it the primary bedroom, there are going to be people who are going to say, that's dumb. Why would I change? That doesn't affect anybody. And they will think they're right. But categorically, you can't know that. You can't know that it doesn't affect you. You can think that it doesn't matter, and you can be wrong, but it costs you nothing to change your language or adjust. And that's what happens over time. And there will be, like all change, there will be people who are resistant to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are going to end this segment very, very shortly. Just because I'm aware of the time, and there's a couple more things I want to go over next.
Yeah, AI could be a long one.
AI I want to cover next, and then we're going to do some very, very quick fire questions for you. Okay, it's going to be the old game of answer as quickly as you possible without thinking about the answer.
You
and
can
just
tell that
answer
brevity is a
instinctively.
strong suit of.
um, so the last question on this actual topic, and I feel like this one is going to be quite an important one because it kind of flips the script a little bit. Can they be misused? Can they be abused
Who's they?
without discrediting their purpose? Because obviously, I'm not going to go over what are safety tools, how to use them, and all the
Okay.
rest of it, because there's 100,000 resources out there. I'm interested in the other side of the argument, how they are abused, how they are misused, and how GMs use them to, or not just GMs, how players use them to get their own ways as well. Because let's face it, there are people out there that will do stupid things and say
Right.
stupid things.
I would have to guess by volume. That seems like the more likely, abuse of safety tools, right? Is someone doing some social manipulation to get their way, to oust a player they don't like for other reasons, right? They
Mm.
simply don't want to play with them. I will claim, that I didn't like this, or they, there was a challenge. I have not encountered that in my own experience, thank goodness, because that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Well,
it's one of those
see,
things that yeah,
again,
law of big numbers. It's got to happen.
yeah,
There's
again,
enough games that someone is being a bad actor in that space.
again, having a platform not addressing these kinds of things would be negligent of me. And even as a small platform, and I mean, I am a small platform, I by no means claim to have hundreds of thousands of followers. I don't. On TikTok, I have 450 followers, and I'm happy and I'm proud to have 450 followers on
Yeah.
TikTok. But I was reading a story. And it really it irked me in such a way because it was making out that the DM was being prejudiced towards a particular demographic
Mm.
when it was actually just in fact that this individual themselves was being problematic. He had had a negative reaction and did handle the situation poorly, granted, but it was a far cry to claim that they were
Right.
being prejudiced in any way. And they say they were being prejudiced because this particular individual was referring to their partner's ex using he, him rather than they, them. When actually, when the GM knew the individual went by he,
Oh,
him.
they were supposedly inadvertently dead naming or dead pronouncing a
Yeah,
person that no longer used. Okay, yeah, he, him. But yeah,
and
fair.
and also the fact that, as I say, the DM, although aware of it, was it was force of habit because that's how they knew him. That's how that DM in particular knew him or knew them, I should say. And moreover, it was their partner's ex that he was discussing. So it's one thing to go, oh yeah, they were being mean to my friend. And fine, you can draw your own conclusions on whether they
Yeah.
were or they weren't, doing this intentionally. But
I think it's
when it,
it's splitting hairs on what the relationship is, right? What matters is right now someone is claiming this DM is intentionally harming someone
yeah,
else, right, in some
yeah,
way. And the question is, one, is that true? And two, do we have a mechanism for reconciling this, right? A claim is made. Is there appeal process, right? Like
hmm
this is like a report on a website, right? Is there some type of way to tell, like, oh, is this true? Is, was there bad acting? Was there any kind of reconciliation? Like, I think there's a difference between, yeah, if I intentionally call someone by the wrong pronouns simply because that's a soapbox I want to stand on, which I would not for the record. Um, and someone said, hey, that's incorrect. They go by they, them, or, whatever it is. if my answer is anything other than, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I'll try to do better in the beginning or in the future, but also please, allow me some grace in case I slip up out of force of habit." Like that should be the end of it. So what moves on from there, I think, is the
But
question of,
this all boiled down because the original issue wasn't actually anything to do with that. This is why I believe that this individual was just out to complain about this DM, because there was a situation at the table where the GM had skipped over this player both during a roleplay moment and during a combat moment. Now, as a DM, even a professional DM, on occasion I skip players unintentionally and they go, I wanted to do something. I'll go, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Okay, yeah, sure, go ahead. And, they go, oh, I did bring it up to him, but he still skipped over me. At that point, I sit back and I have to start weighing the realistic probabilities, right? I sit back as a person and I go, okay, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but the likelihood is this DM wanted to finish doing what they were doing first and then would come back round to you, or would circle round to you rather than stopping someone's combat turn once they'd already started, rather than stopping that and then rewinding everything and then going back again. When, in fact, it's only one for the sake of one turn and not even a full round. And it was a casual game, it was a free game, it was a game amongst friends. And for me, this person was more looking for holes to pick at.
Yeah.
Because they felt slighted, and basically they outed the DM at the table and said, I have a problem with you because you keep doing this, XYZ.
Yeah.
And had basically caused a huge divide in the friendship group because they had stood up and basically called out this DM as being a bad DM, a bad actor, doing this, that, and the other intentionally and everything else, and then wondered why that DM then chose not to run a game anymore for them.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what the issue is, unless it is directly harmful in the moment. Then and there, in the middle of the game session, it's not the time to call those things out. That is a conversation to be had after. And then, process it either after the session as a group or in direct messages privately, and then come to the group and talk about it before the next session. But don't derail a game in the middle of your narrative, your combat, whatever, to say, hey, I don't like that you do this or that thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and unless it is such a thing, like if you're getting interrupted a lot, right? The DM should try and move the spotlight accordingly, and gently, I think, manage that without breaking the flow of the game. If it comes to it and you need to say, hey, pardon me, let them finish, then you do that. And then if it escalates to such a challenge that it needs to be addressed at a higher level, then have a conversation afterwards and say, hey, I notice this keeps happening. This is the impact. Do me a favor and let's try and correct it in this or that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are going to jump on now to probably one of the more interesting controversies in the TTRPG industry right now. Yeah. We are going to be discussing AI, its impact on our space, what people think is and isn't okay, and why.
So, oh yeah.
I just love the bop.
The bop it is a bop. It is. I like me a sea shanty. So I have a question.
Yes.
And maybe this is a terrible thing to do live. Let's use an example. That bop. Was that something that was produced via AI or by a human artist?
Nope. That was by a human artist. That was so I am part of a number of D&D groups, as you can imagine. Yeah. Somebody shared their bop and I was like, hey, I want to commission you for something from for a podcast, and They went, "Oh, cool. What is it? What's it about?" Blah, blah, blah. I gave them the brief. Where is it? I said, I want it to feel nautical, nostalgic, but modern, if that makes any sense. When the music hits, I want it to be like a 90s kid watching their first ever episode of Pokemon, but without it feeling aged. And that is exactly
That's
what
a
they
high
delivered.
bar. But yeah, the results were good. So, right, the point, yeah, I brought that up, right, is
Hmm.
we don't want to be hypocrites. Um,
Absolutely.
I will say this is a very loaded topic and it's a very layered topic. There are so many layers of application where use of AI can be a boon or can be damaging or both at the same time, right? And I'm going to struggle to briefly make the points that I want to make without diving too deep into any of these. But
We can we
I
can we
think,
can we can
yeah,
dive deep because
okay,
this is
we'll
this is the
fix it in
point of
post.
this. Yeah, this is this is one of the things, right? This is one of the points of this show is that we are addressing the controversies
Yeah,
in this space.
this
We are
could and probably should be a whole episode, right? But so at the basis, right?
we
The
for this one we
Yeah,
will sort of dive down into it a
yeah,
little bit, but we're not gonna sort of full on dig the Mariana Trench into
yeah.
it.
So personally, my personal experience, right? There was this kind of AI. We're still in it, but there was this AI boom. We're all excited about these tools, these things. It's really cool what you can do. I have used it. I have used it in proximity to my games, right? In that, like, my profile picture on Start Playing, right, was AI generated, and that's something that now, as I find myself, having made enough money which generally, that Start Playing money goes towards medical debt because I'm an American. But now, as I start to make my way out of that, the goal is then to get real human art commissioned, and I try to make that distinction. Right, I try to refer to AI generate images as just that, not art, because I think it's a powerful tool, but I think art is the wrong place for AI to be used and focused. And I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum. I have a promotional image where I have the characters in the party, their character art lined up, and then there's like a mystery character. It's like, join the party. And most of those are AR generated because that's what my players wanted. Even when I said, hey, I'm trying to use less or no AI in my game, let's look at some things on Pinterest that we could use. And it's like not for promotions, just for like their tokens in Foundry, right? Let's find some free use stuff. And generally, most of them still said, no, I really like this AI generated one because it's exactly what I was looking for. And that's true. And it's hard to beat. And I can't say
Hmm.
anything about that. They're using it for free. Some could still make the argument that there's an invisible layer of harm because to generate that, it used real artists' work to train models and they weren't compensated for it. And I think that's too deep a rabbit hole to get into today. But the
So
general point is,
here's
yeah, art is not the place
no. So
for it.
here's the thing. I started the World Masters Guild, which is our community Discord group. Anyone is welcome to join it. Discord.gg/World Masters Guild # shameless plug. But anybody is welcome to join it. And when we first started out, we were like, hey, we're gonna have a hard no AI policy, no AI art policy because the community is dead set against it. Now, this was my initial preliminary marketing research. How hard is the TTRPG community against AI art? What is the actual general feel of it? And generally, people said they would not join a Discord if they allowed AI artwork.
Pretty steadfast against it. And I carry that as a point of pride for the
I
community.
I discovered something, and it kind of makes me chuckle and kind of makes me sad. So, as a publisher under Fervent Drift RPG and Fantasy Limited, we still hold a strict no AI art policy. My own professional games, I now hold a no professional AI
No AI. Yeah, yeah.
No generative AI art
Yes.
policy. And I will use real world artists where it is possible for me to. It's not, granted, it's not always possible for me to, so I tend to either just do a doodle or I will just use descriptors. But that being said, for the casual game master or the casual player, say for example, let's use American terminology here. Say for example, he works 75 hours a week in Walmart, and it's all they can do. And for whatever reason, that's all they can muster the energy to do. They don't have $500 spare at the end of the month for a single character artwork.
Yeah, or any art commission.
Yeah.
Right.
And I approach artists all the time, real artists. Now, real artists are fantastic. Their work is incredible. It's stunning. It's beautiful. It's also way outpriced. And by that, I mean AI generators can do this thing for free. It's not always great. It's not always accurate. It's not always pretty. It can do it for free. Hold on.
Can I push back on that? Okay, go ahead.
Let me just get to the end of my point here.
Yeah.
For the casual game master and the casual player that want to give their characters or their game that little bit of extra life, that don't have a spare $50-$60 for character artwork or whatever else, it's convenience, it's accessible, and it's cheap. And those are three things that will always sell.
Yes.
Whether you agree with it or you don't, they are three things that will always sell. Now, me personally, anything generated by AI, I don't even refer to as artwork.
Yes.
I refer to it as image automation. And I think we need to adopt that.
I think it's an important distinction.
Because if we change the definition of what artwork is to exclude generative AI images, and we define generative AI images as automated imaging or automated imaging, then we actually kind of start to separate the two things, and then real artists have a real shot at firing the bullets at the AI companies that have trained their machines on this.
Agreed. A couple of points here, right? Because I don't want to make it sound like I'm positioning myself as wholly anti-AI, right? I think there are appropriate use and valuable use cases, but it needs to be used appropriately. I had a colleague who, in my day job, like as a project manager, we were making some type of report. And this is grunt work that I could spend an hour making this template, and then fill in the details, or I could ask an AI tool to produce the template and then do the specialized work that I can do, which is understanding the content, right, and application. I did that, but then he wanted to see something changed, and he was about to go send another prompt through, and it was something menial, like changing the formatting of the title. And my response was like, no, we've already got it in a document form. I'm going to make that change. Don't send a whole nother iteration of AI generation for that small change. So the difference here, right, is I use a lawnmower to mow my lawn because it's effective and it's speedy and whatnot. I do not leave my lawnmower running in the yard because I like the sound of it. So there's an appropriate use for that tool and a very inappropriate use of that tool, both in social responsibility, environmental impact, and I think that's what, no matter what level you're using these tools at, you need to be considerate of.
So for me here, okay, you've touched on something very personal for me here. As I said, I don't use generative AI for any creative work.
Right.
And that is a very important distinction because
it's not writing your campaigns or planning encounters for you.
Because of what I'm about to disclose, it's very, very important that people understand. that in terms of a creative tool, it is terrible. In terms of a practical tool, it has brought me back from the brink. What do I mean by that? I discovered I have ADHD and ASD. As soon as I got those diagnoses, my mask fell off, and it fell off faster than I could have anticipated. You know, everything was starting to make sense, but also everything around me was louder. Every little sound, every little squeak, every little irritation that I had became amplified because I had a reason and something within me went, we can accept this as being a problem to us.
Mm-hmm.
I use generative AI as a personal daily planner. I use it to gamify my life. I am currently, according to ChatGPT, I am currently Arcanist. No, what is it? I've even forgotten it now.
I'm taking it to be you asked it to summarize you or your workplace or one of those memes. Oh, okay.
So I basically gave myself a persona. Okay.
Okay.
It was like Arcanist, the general Arcanist of the 3rd rank, or something along those lines.
Don't like how that reads.
Well, level 1
Point. Yeah,
wizard or whatever.
Some fantasy or
yeah.
alien.
And I basically said to it, right, each day I'm going to journal to you. This is my diagnosis. Give me experience based on my achievements each day. And for about a week, I was doing this. And it helped. For that first week, it helped. After that, it burnt me out. Because it meant that every evening I had to stop what I was doing, or I had to extend my day in order to fill this out. But what it did do for me is it gave me an enabler. It gave me something that I could use to actually become human.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds so wrong to use the terminology like that. But I felt human because a robot was taking out the kind of neurotypical expectations of what I should be fulfilling every day and rewarding me based on my neurodivergence, which allowed me to accept the neurodivergence. Oh, congratulations, you got out of bed 50 XP. Wait, shouldn't I just be able to get out of bed? Well, no, because a lot of ADHD people struggle to get out of bed before noon. And they do so because, generally speaking, they're late night people. So by getting up, it went, oh, do you know what? We're going to give you some points for that. And it gave me the acceptance that this is why I'm sluggish in the mornings. This is why in the mornings I don't function until I've had, at least a good 2 hours to wake up in the morning.
Right. Yeah, and that is a valid and I think really valuable use case. And we are going to see a lot more things in the realm of what we call agents, right? Is an AI, a large language model, acting as some type of different actor or agent that can provide some type of help. And of course, there need to be legal guardrails to make sure it's not giving faulty medical advice or whatnot. And the same could be said, though, did that AI replace the role, the job of a counselor, right? Is there a counselor somewhere that should have had another patient that didn't because of the AI? And that's for someone else to decide. And I'm going to say probably not in most cases, because a lot of people might do that because it's cheaper and accessible, but it could also be a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Right? A gateway.
Again, for me, a counselor doesn't work. I've had had counseling in the past. I've had CBT in the past.
Right.
They don't work for me, and they don't work for me because my neurodivergence, as a general rule of thumb, doesn't like talking about anything other than my special interests, other than things that interest me. And when you've got a counsellor basically asking you questions that as a neurodivergent person you perceive as small talk, you lose interest very, very quickly. And by doing it this way, what I was actually doing is I was getting the AI to mirror me back at
Right.
me and go, "This is fine.
Yeah.
You
So
don't
in
need
your
any."
use case, though, so it wasn't the case, right? It wasn't the case that it was cannibalizing human work, human labor, because you've already identified, right, that alternative doesn't work. I think this is an example of, right, if you're the type like me that like prefers audiobooks because I can listen to them in my commute or while I'm, rocking a kid to sleep, right? That does not cannibalize the sale of physical books because I'm not gonna buy a physical book. But I say that with care because it could be a slippery slope argument towards something else, right? It's often the argument for piracy is, well, it doesn't hurt the creator because I was never going to buy that game or that movie anyway. And I think we just need to be cognizant of that potentially faulty justification. And I want to go back and right. You point to you said, oftentimes
that's a lot of long words for 1:45 in the morning. I had
oh,
to
no,
really
I'm
work
sorry.
that one out. No,
I
you're
have,
okay.
I have
I just thought. Hang on a minute. That
concept of what my sentence even was.
I had to like piece that.
So I want to point back though. I didn't get to finish on this. You made the point that sometimes artists are prohibitively expensive. And first, I want to say, right, it's the same as paid DMs, right? Let's not be hypocrites.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
I think right there's levels, right? There's ranges. As paid DMs, I think we can justify subscribing to Patreons or getting, commissions for artwork. But yes, for my home game that's just for me and my friends, I can't throw, $100 at having this really cool commission made for, even if it's a reoccurring character, but maybe you can in a paid game. So I think it's finding that level of involvement and not using the tool frivolously.
Yes.
Like, I think it should not become entertainment. Now I'm talking about like environmental impact, where I've had this conversation actually with a player who, will post these AI videos of their character, almost like little influencer blurbs, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool because it adds a lot of life to the chat, right? Into the kind of 24/7 experience that this game is. But then I grapple with like, man, are we contributing to what will possibly balloon societally, right, into much greater volume of frivolous use of these tools and cause larger problems? And I don't know the answer, right? This is my own challenge I'm grappling with right now because I'm not trying to shame anyone for using a tool that is available.
And I think this is the problem, okay? And this is why in the World Masters Guild we actually changed how we handle it, and this actually comes very nicely back full circle to the beginning, because my initial research, as I said, told me that this community hates artificial intelligence, automated images, and so we banned it. And people kept coming in, kept posting the images. We asked them politely, please don't post those images. They're AI generated. Please don't generate them. Please don't post them here. If you want to post them in your own games, feel free. If you want to put them on the VTT, feel free. We don't care about that because we're not going to police that. But what we can police is our own server, right?
Emotional images or such like that.
Then I went, do you know what? We now have 275 people in this server. I'm going to throw out a poll to see what people actually want. And there were 3 options. No image automation. Image automation only in specific areas where you have to have a particular role in order to engage with that content.
Yeah, you've opted in.
Or just allow it free flow. The most popular one was to allow it only in particular areas in the Discord.
It's really
Nobody's
sensible.
used it.
Oh. Okay, so that's essentially what I was going to recommend, because I've seen the same, like in Facebook groups, right? Like I'm not a member of it, I keep seeing it suggested because the algorithm that's like D&D with AI, and I've seen these groups come up with similar policies to say, hey, no AI images here, and we'll support it. it's nice that there are communities that exist to support those who do want to lean into that tech or that tool, or maybe develop solo role playing via AI agent opportunities. Again, it's something that I can say this as a person who now makes money to run D&D games. That should be threatening to me, right? If I can be replaced with an AI chatbot, but I don't find myself threatened by that because of my view of what the D&D experience is, and that it is
Yes.
largely a social thing.
And
If
it's
all you
emotional.
want is the narrative, the storytelling, the power fantasy, that may be a really cool option for you. And moving forward, it's going to expand. There's no doubt, right? But I don't think it's going to replace what the community has right now.
And
Similarly,
this, sorry, carry on. I keep
so
interrupting.
in short, my wife it was interior designer by trade. Now she's full-time stay-at-home mom, but also has started a business painting pet portraits. She's an artist. Um, I think you had kind of touched on this, is that people want a genuine human element to what we actually call art. And because you could throw a picture of your dog into ChatGPT and say, hey, make this look like an oil painting, or
Hmm.
gouache and watercolor, whatever. She does art stuff, not me. Um, I paint D&D minis. um, and you would get it, and you could have it printed out, and you could throw some hodgepodge on it, and it's going to look, to the untrained eye, maybe from a distance, like a hand painted image of your dog, but it's not art, and it wasn't made by an artist. And I think that's why people continue to seek her out in the same way that people seek out professional D&D games. They seek out her and pay more than I could ever justify paying for a picture of my dog. But it's because it's expectations, right? There's a
Yes.
demand. People want this thing. This person has said, this is what my time is worth for me to create it, and they find union in that. And I think
Yep.
it's true in all industries.
And going to the positives of where AI is now, and ways in which we can actually ethically use AI. Because again, we're talking about it as a tool and how the technology can be used to help aid and actually improve the TTRPG experience at the table, rather than just be harmful generative slop or GMs that are using it to write their entire campaigns. There is one tool, and I know there are others that exist that do the same thing, but these guys were the first ones I came across. They're two really, really great guys, really friendly. I was in their alpha and their beta test for this product. I've spent more on it than I should have, as we all do with things we love, and this is a tool called Archivist AI. Do I agree with everything Archivist AI does and can do? No, because it does contain automated image generation. So it is possible that you click a button and it generates an AI art image.
Is this, to catch me
However,
up and viewers up in case they don't know, is this it's a module that is like an AI
no, no,
DM
no, no,
assistant? No?
no, kind of, but no.
I think I've seen
This
this.
is Archivist AI. Okay, Archivist AI is a diction tool. It is
Okay.
a transcription tool.
Uh,
And basically, what it does, there's a Discord bot. If you play in Discord, as an example, it will listen into your campaign. You tell it who the players are,
okay.
who the player
Yes.
characters are, and basically it will transcribe what happens in the campaign. But what's really cool about this tool,
Hmm.
what is really cool about it, and it makes my life 10 times easier, is it picks out my NPCs, it picks out my items, it picks out my locations and my factions and all the different types of groups that we have, and puts it all into a nice tidy compendium for me.
Yep. Yeah. I think that is what I would call technical work, right? Grunt work, if you will. I think using AI tools for organization, right? Better note
Hmm.
taking, because sometimes you can't take notes at the speed that people talk. I know I sure can't, even when I'm not running the game. When I'm playing, I'm a slow note taker. I don't think, and I hope that that's not something that the community would scoff at, especially
Absolutely.
when it creates such a rich living document to catalog the cool experiences, the cool stories that you all have told.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
And
really neat.
again,
I'll look at that and see more about it.
if you like generative AI, it does it. If you don't like it, you can actually turn the thing off.
Nice.
Like, you can turn the AI art generation off completely.
Right.
So when your players go in there, even your players can't generate AI art, and it's an incredible tool. And, people are surprised that myself, somebody who is a creative, uses it. But it's not feeding LLM. The only thing it's doing is reading the information, cataloging the information, and spitting the information that you've already given it back out in a particularly organized way. Again, yes, people have been hurt by the LLM machine, but the damage is done. It's now down to those people, not to say that we can't back them, but it's down to those people to take the fight. We can't fight the fight for them. We can stand beside them, we can push them from behind, but ultimately they have to be the ones to stand up and tell us how it's affected them and tell their stories.
That's the
Right?
important part, right?
And
Is
again,
whether or not you think this is a fight to be fought is giving people the ability, the platform to tell their story.
Absolutely.
So we can make more informed decisions on our own use or endorsement or, the opposite.
Yes, absolutely. And, the damage is done. There's not much that can be done for that other than them get the reparations from those companies.
That's
them
important.
Get the recognition from those companies.
I don't like the phrase the damage is done sounding dismissive, but the point you make, I think, redeems that, right? Is there can be further actions to repair that.
Yeah. So, I mean, not even repair, because you can't repair that damage. It's the old, okay, crumple up a cardboard box, crush it up in your hands, now unfurl it and say, sorry, is it still crumpled? It's that old argument of the damage is done, the damage is there. We now have the technology and we have the tools. The technology and the tools aren't going to go anywhere. All we can do is move forward wiser with more knowledge and use the tools responsibly to a responsible level.
I think that sentence was a perfect summary of my views on everything we have talked about tonight. Truly is.
Yeah.
I think that's all. If we all could take that single sentence, is all we can do is move forward with the knowledge that we've gained and use the tools that we have garnered responsibly. If you put that on a t-shirt and live that, I think you're going to do a pretty good job at being a decent human being and an exceptional dungeon master.
Yes, absolutely.
Did I time that right? So, are we near the end, or did I?
We are near the end, right?
We can fix it in post. I just want to keep saying
we are going to we're going to do the hot takes round.
Oh yeah,
very very quick. It's literally yes or no answers only. Should be really easy for a professional GM. Let's see how many times he slips up. I am only kidding. There's no right or wrong here. Session 0, mandatory. Yes or no?
Yes.
How you DMing is the future.
It's the present. No. It's already
Rules lawyer, useful or dreadful?
Ooh.
Quick answers.
More often than not, dreadful.
Is 5e overrated?
Yes.
Is player agency overused as a phrase?
No.
Do most tables need firmer DM leadership?
No, in my own experience.
Are safety tools just good communication by another name?
Yes. I think so.
Advice for us. Okay, we're gonna get into one sentence answers here. Still short, snappy answers.
It's gonna be a little bit.
Piece of advice for aspiring professional DMs.
Oh man, I think it is. It's gonna sound hippy dippy, but follow your joy, right? know the type of game that I talk about catering to audiences, know the type of game that you want to run and will run well and be comfortable doing it. It'll be fun. Your players, you'll have retention. That's, yeah.
3 red flags and 3 green flags of a professional DM and what players should be looking for.
Ooh. Oh man, 3 of each. Red flags, I'm going to say, is not having any kind of conversation with you beforehand to identify, is this the right game, right? They're just trying to get you in, get you signed up. A green flag is they seem genuinely excited about the hobby or what they're doing, and they talk to you, they're promoting more than just the date and the time and the, here's my link, yada, yada, yada. Another red flag is this is of players and DMs or just GMs?
Just professional DMs.
Yeah, professional DMs. Red flag. It's tough because we talked about this, right? Is your experience may not be, I'm going to say, it doesn't have any kind of proof of concept, right? To show that they have experience. And then final red flag would be not having a session 0. Not communicating. And then another green flag I would say would be really, knowing, I kind of said this in my other answer, but knowing what they want to run in a game, right? I think the more they know what they want to run, the better the experience is going to be. It's not going to be a kind of a wish-wash of whatever comes next.
Absolutely. One final thing. Thoughts on where the hobby is heading? Are you optimistic about it? Are you pessimistic about it? Or is there a mixed feeling?
So optimistic because much like everything else said, right? Society moving forward, learning more. I think we are learning how valuable and therapeutic role-playing experiences, social experiences can be. And I think, from the satanic panic of the 80s, we've moved a long way to it being represented positively in media, to being mainstream, to being cool. Like Matt Mercer and Critical Role is cool now. You can try to say it isn't, but it is.
I mean,
Brandon Lee Mulligan and D20 sold out Madison Square Garden. It's cool. So
it's popular. Let's not go as far as cool, but it's
being
popular.
Being nerdy is cool now. But maybe it's not posh, but it's cool. So we're here, and I think we're heading further. We're going to see it become very regular and be used in in education, in healthcare.
Already is.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that will become, right now it's in the basement stage, right? Your mom's basement in the 80s.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see it become more mainstream, and that's a really cool concept.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Brian, for joining me tonight on the Captain's Tabletop. Thank you, everyone who's been watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I think we've actually gone up by about 6 subscribers in a single night, which is quite impressive.
If we go by percentages, that's fantastic. Yeah,
I mean, considering I started with 24, I think I have 30 now. That's you know what?
That's a 25% increase. No, that's awesome. David, thank you for letting me be here. It was really cool to get to be here for the inaugural session.
Thank you again, as I say, Brian. Thank you very much for joining me. A round of applause for you if it decides to actually play. There we go. Is it going to play the?
Are you doing some soundboard stuff?
Yeah. It's not going to play. There we go.
We'll fix it in post. Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. This was good.
I have been the captain upon the Fervent Drift. You have joined me in my cabin at my tabletop. And as ever, my friends, may all your 20s be natural. And I am sure we'll be docking very soon. Have a good night.